A loud growl echoes through that forest. Two young elves run scared among the trees. One of them shouts, "Step of the Wind," and on the terminal, it shows that this skill was activated. He keeps running, fleeing from something while using the skills Fleet of Foot and Green Goer. The girl asks the boy named Orntal to slow down. Her name is Malika, a level 9 forest elf, and she's under the negative status of confusion. Desperate, the guy says that he is coming after them, and that she must keep running without looking back. He is a level 10 elf, under the negative status of terror. Then he asks if she wants to wake up inside that thing's belly. She screams in fear, telling him to use his ranger skills and get them out of there. Knowing he's screwed, he admits that he doesn't have any left. Suddenly, he seems to realize something, and sees that he just gained a skill, Flight of the Coward, a skill that gives an extra boost to flee from enemies as long as you don't look back. Picking up the pace, he thanks the blessed Lothrin and hopes this is enough. He asks Malika to hold his hand tightly, and shoots off like a meteor toward the village, saying they need to heat it up. The creature is left surprised they're alone in the forest now, and leaves somewhat upset, having no one else to chase. Sometime later, the duo of adventurers arrives at the city gates, shouting for them to sound the alarms. Malika collapses to the ground exhausted, while Orntal points, saying that it's the humans. The people in the city are desperate, some say they're back, while one specific elf just watches, intrigued. In a large luxurious hall, someone asks if he heard it, and that elf says that a boy was shouting loud enough to wake the dead. Then she says that if this report is true, they are going to need him, and she calls him Raritan. He says that according to the report, it's a young human, and at that age they are only a small threat. The noble says that they evolve quickly, and even a young one is dangerous. She asks if she needs to remind him that they started the War of the Six Nations over a simple border conflict, and their thirst for levels has no limits. They would have taken all of Elatra if everyone hadn't come together to stop them. Elves, Sergonids, Harpies, Dwarves, Jelens, and Draconians, and even so they barely managed to defeat them. The longer the humans fought, the more dramatic their level growth became. It was an addiction that drowned them in madness. Those affected were impossible to subdue until the humans doomed themselves with one final act of revenge, an act called the Cataclysm, and since that event, they hadn't seen a human. That's why they need him. Raritan is a level 48 ranger elf, and his status shows he is under the effect of melancholy. She says that Kira and Menta are out on patrol, and therefore their village is vulnerable. They need him to investigate and to do what needs to be done, before this human is already too far away. Tense, Raritan says that after everything that happened, after everything they lost, he tells the elders that he doesn't know if he has that inside him. The man says that everyone still feels the pain of their stories and asks how they could forget, but that Raritan is the only elite ranger left in the village. Raritan looks at him with a helpless gaze. Then after a few seconds, he composes himself, and now more firmly says that it will be as they wish. Sometime later, already in the forest, the elves observe something. One of them, Tense, asks if that is what he thinks, and Raritan interrupts, telling him to stay sharp. He uses an identification skill. Observing that creature, he sees that it is indeed a level 4 human, with the statuses of melancholy, loneliness, and leveling algo. He has just eliminated a creature and continues dragging his sword, saying that he is hungry. Slowly, Raritan begins to draw an arrow from his quiver. He says that this will be painless and activates his skills Power Shot and Piercing Arrow. Then he fires at the human, saying that it will be one shot and one instant. He says may the god of humans give him a gentle embrace, and may he never again darken the branches of Ixalan. The arrow travels its path with force, but it seems the human manages to dodge it. It then hits a tree, opening a huge hole in it. Surprised, Raritan says that even at such a low level, he is very fast. Now it seems that the human has noticed his opponents, and begins to dodge a series of arrows being fired at him, until finally one hits him right in the leg. Tense with the human hit, that ranger charges at him with his weapon, and delivers an attack that seems to have been easily blocked by the guy. They start exchanging blows in the center of that clearing, until the human decides to stop defending and attacks, catching the elf by surprise. He seems to be struggling hard to hold back the attack, while the human says please. He says that if he can understand him, then Raritan is surprised by that, and asks the rangers to step back. When suddenly a huge creature appears, the Lord of the Forest, a level 42 creature with the status of infected. The massive monster attacks and throws some of them away. Raritan jumps onto that thing attacking it, trying to defend one of his companions. He drives his weapon into the monster's back, but realizes that he's now stuck with the weapon up there. The monster looks at him, while he is forced to jump off and back away. That thing roars in fury and charges at him. He ends up losing his balance during the fight. Then the creature falls on him as he tries to defend himself. At that moment, the human starts approaching the creature, while that thing growls and drools over Raritan, and drives his massive sword through the monster's head. The enemy collapses lifeless onto the ground. Crawling out from under that monster, Raritan says, "May Lothrin have mercy on me." On the terminal, it shows that the enemy has been defeated, and that it was a raging elder bear, and the human levels up several times to level 8. Worried, the elf uses the identification skill and realizes that the human progressed a lot. Surprised, he says that he hasn't seen something like this in a long time, and that he had forgotten how horrifying this is. Then suddenly the guy pulls his sword out of the defeated creature, looks at Raritan, saying that he tried to kill him. He adds that he did nothing to the elf, and yet he still tried to kill him like anything else in this godforsaken forest. Preparing an attack, he says he got 4 levels from that bear. And with a look full of determination, he says he wonders how many more he could get by eliminating him. 1 week before that event, a cheerful guy asks someone to tell him more about last night's party, and his friend says it was epic, calling him Rob, and that he should have been there. But he replies that he was banned because of the fireworks, even though they can't prove anything. His friend says they would have liked him. Rob says that people like him because they like his friend, but the guy replies no, they like Rob because he's cool. Then he gets happy and shy about that. Says that if he keeps saying things like that, he's going to blush, and his friend jokes that he's already blushing, but the guy defends himself saying it's the heat. Someone calls for Jason and he goes to talk to two girls, while Rob thinks that they've been friends since kindergarten and that Jason always looked out for him, always trying to pull him out of his shell. But the truth is that he loves his shell, it's comfortable and smells like pizza. Jason calls his friend to go, saying they don't want to be late for the therapist, so Rob asks if he's planning on running all the way there. But suddenly something strange happens. His friend asks what's wrong, and he's acting like he just saw his high school gym teacher. Scared and stammering, he points something out to his friend. Jason curses and says that it's not his gym teacher. Grabbing his friend, Rob tells him to run. They start running from that thing when Jason notices that another student has fallen. He lets go of his friend while Rob says, "Jason, no." Reaching the fallen person, he tells them not to be afraid, that he's got them. Rob thinks that he's always been a spectator, that he was never a hero. That thing starts thrashing in the hallway while he thinks that it was always Jason, never himself. Then he yells, telling his friend that it's right behind him. They start running again while Rob thinks that he was never the hero. At that moment, when the creature's tentacles grabs his friend's leg. Falling to the ground, he asks his friend for help, saying he can't move. Then Rob runs toward his friend, thinking that this time he has to try. Suddenly, a chain comes out of that thing, heading straight toward Jason lying on the ground. Without thinking twice, Rob jumps forward, grabbing his friend while trying to shield him from that chain. But even so, the chain wraps around his arm. He says that this doesn't look good as the chain turns into a shackle attached to his arm. His friend seems free now, but he is being pulled into that thing. Jason runs after him, shouting his name. As he's being dragged into that door, Rob calls out his friend's name. The last thing he sees before being swallowed by that portal is his friend running toward him. Rob falls into a dark, empty space, being dragged by the chain. That purple thing starts to cover his entire body, until the next moment he's inside a cube. And inside the cube, he seems to travel further and further away, while a voice says, you will do. Sometime later, Rob wakes up somewhere, wondering if he's dead. It looks like a cave, and he tells himself not to go toward the light. Coming out of the cave, he realizes he's not dead, which is great, but he wonders where he is. He walks to the edge of a cliff, and manages to get a wide view of where he is. He can see a volcano and some animals that should be extinct flying over the forest. Rob gets scared by this and realizes he's very far from campus. Trying to calm himself, he thinks he needs to get back to Jason and wonders where the hell he could be, questioning if he's okay. He decides to go that way, but gets surprised thinking what the heck is that thing he's wearing on his feet. Then realizes he has a strange sword on his back too. Drawing the weapon, he realizes it's real, cutting himself on the sword's edge. A terminal appears right in front of him, saying he lost 1 HP. After clicking it, it shows his name, saying he's a level 1 human, and also displays stats like HP, Vigor, and MP. He thinks this might be a VR or something. He realizes there's a lot there, and that it all sounds like RPG lingo. He finds a passive skill called speed reading and wonders if it's actually a skill. He thinks that he's pretty calm about this, not freaking out or anything. Suddenly, a huge noise comes from the forest, and he thinks there it is, and now he is freaking out. Somewhere else, a huge diseased wolf appears. It walks, leaving a disgusting trail behind, and the terminal shows that it's a level 8 furious wolf, and it's also infected type. Rob thinks, what the hell? How do I use this? Damn it. While the creature growls at him, he points his weapon and tells it to stay away while stammering. He starts squinting wildly in front of him like a madman, not even looking at what he's doing. Not even the creature is close to him yet. But at the next moment, that thing roars in fury and charges at him as he tries to defend himself however he can, still without looking forward. Completely by accident, he stabs the creature with his sword, only realizing it afterward. Even so, the monster growls and snarls at him. Rob, terrified, shuts his eyes and screams. Then that thing bites his shoulder, wounding him. Driven by the pain, he moves the weapon against the creature, and with one movement, slices that wolf in half. The thing falls to the ground, finally defeated. Feeling the wound, he curses and seems to lose his balance, then falls to the ground next to the monster, with the terminal showing that he lost 5 HP, and then 9 while he says, "Damn, this hurts." Rob keeps losing HP progressively due to bleeding, and realizes that this isn't VR, that he's actually bleeding. On the terminal, it shows that he is suffering from severe bleeding and has lost a lot of HP. Leaning against a tree with his HP dropping more and more, he wonders if this is a nightmare and that maybe he'll wake up in his warm bed. Looking at his hand, he says he's sure he's dying and needs to stop the bleeding. Rob starts working on it, grabbing a piece of his clothing and tearing it. He thinks that it won't stop and that he can't think straight, and that he's never been hurt like this before. He tells himself to remember what he learned in biology class, trying to treat it with a bit of humor to see if it helps. He wonders if Jason's mom wasn't a nurse, and what she would say, guessing it was to stop dissociating and elevate to reduce, so he thanks Jason's mom. With difficulty, he lies on his side, keeping his injured arm raised, but thinks this isn't working. He curses the situation and says he's not going to die there. Does he think he can just throw him in there through a portal, literally throwing him to the wolves? And that he's not going to accept this lying there. Says not in a million years and adds that he's getting out of this. Then he shouts that whoever he is, he's going to find him and kick his butt and make him open another portal to send him back home. Something starts happening to the remains of that wolf. It begins to melt and turns into a puddle. Suddenly, a terminal pops up saying that the Furious Wolf enemy was defeated. It also says that he reached level 2, gaining 5 more attribute points, which leaves our hero confused, wondering what's going on. The terminal shows that he earned more bonus points and got a skill called Don't Be Gentle, which improves his resistances when near death. He clicks confirm, where it shows that he'll gain 10 more vitality points. Then he receives Tough Skin, which reduces the damage he takes and also gets regeneration, which heals 10% of his HP every hour. After that, he falls asleep, lying there on the forest floor. Jason says he heard there will be a party on 4th Street, and Rob says that party sounds nice, fun, booze, and stuff like that. His friend asks if he's serious and what happened to him, saying he didn't meet people, only video games and chaos. Defending himself, he says he doesn't go around causing trouble. It's just that trouble has a habit of finding him, and Jason says he believes no one will ever know who used the fireworks. Smiling, our hero says they'll never get the chance to make those kinds of mistakes after they graduate, and that they should max out their quota before that. Says he knows this is a dream, but that it's great to see him again, that he can't wait to see him for real again, and that he's going home no matter what. Jason says that even if he does that, you won't see him again because he's dead after all. Shocked, Rob asks what he just said. His friend says, finished, 6 feet under, I'm sure there's another metaphor, I'm dead, Rob, and asks what was he thinking, that he saved him or something, while Rob says this can't have happened, and Jason says he didn't see the consequences. Says that he could have been dragged into the portal, that hell along with him, and that there's no reason to believe it was just one chain. Rob says he doesn't know that he knows nothing about that, but his friend says it could have happened. Our hero yells at him to stop saying these things for him, and then he's just in his head. Jason tells him to look at himself, that he looks like an abandoned puppy, and asks if he really thinks he's his friend, that they met when they were young with no pattern at all. Grabbing the necklace from his neck, he apologizes to the bro and says that he's already gotten over him. Surprised, Rob asks what he's doing. His friend gives him an evil smile, and stepping back asks if he doesn't know. When suddenly several purple tentacles latch onto Rob's shoulder, and that thing starts taking over his entire body. At that moment, he wakes up from the nightmare, scared and gasping for air. Leaning against a tree, he says that nightmare wasn't right, and that he's still in this place. Then he starts removing the bandages from his arm, feeling happy to see that he's healed, coming to the conclusion that this world is different. Says that at least he didn't end up like that wolf. Even thinking that thing is just a pile of slime now, he can't stop looking at it because he was the one who killed it. Covering his mouth, he thinks he's not feeling very well, that it's disgusting, and that he thinks he's gonna. And unable to hold it in, he throws up right there in the corner. He wonders if this day could possibly get any worse. He keeps walking under the rain while the terminal shows that he's losing life but also gaining a bit, telling himself he's an idiot, that it can always get worse. He feels a little better because he's regenerating, although the regeneration is going pretty slowly. But then he seems to realize something, thinking that when he leveled up, he got a bunch of new skills. So he checks the terminal, seeing that this is one that he activated. He wonders if this is some cosmic joke. Either way, whoever runs this place knows Earth's references. Sitting down, he looks at his open terminal and questions whether he needs to get close to dying to gain more skills. But either way, he's going to grab everything he can to survive this fantasy hell. He realizes that the 15 minutes have passed so he can use it again, and that should be good enough to keep him alive, but he wonders if, when that reaches 0, it will be his end. Like a game over screen from a video game, he has the feeling that whoever put him here didn't include a restart button. In his cave, he thinks this place is probably full of furious beasts pumped with steroids, and he just wants to go home. He tries to warm his hands, thinking that if he has to use force to get out of here then. He remembers that moment when he defeated the Furious Wolf. Shivering from the cold, he decides that he'll think about it later. He wonders why he left the scouts before they taught him how to make fire, and that there probably isn't anything useful in his pockets like a lighter. But still, he decides to check and realizes there's something there. It seems like a piece of paper. He then pulls the paper from his pocket and realizes it's a note. Reading it, he gets angry. On the dirty note, it simply says, good luck. He sits there irritated, staring at that bad joke. Somewhere in Exodus, it looks like a group is fighting vigorously against some spiders, and this is Kira, an epic level 27 warrior. Her statuses are determined and exhausted. Menta shouts, telling Kira that there are too many of them. He's a level 25 elf ranger. His statuses are cautious and also tired. She thinks Menta is right, that they won't be able to finish this dungeon with just the 2 of them, so they have no choice. Kara yells for him to stay close, that splitting up would be a death sentence. He says he thought it was an easy dungeon. She says it's the first one that appeared near the village. Menta asks if she just thought she could handle this, and she explains that she's a warrior. Her build is made to handle this, just like his class as a ranger. Pulling him to hide, he corrects her, saying not at their level. Says that if only they could level up faster. Kara says there's only one creature that can do that, and it's by far worse than anything in this dungeon. She thanks Lothran that they don't live near there anymore. Somewhere else, our hero, irritated, questions the good luck note, saying that some idiot put him there, and all they have to say is good luck. He crumples that lame note. Rob says that as long as he stays alive, he's going to find a way back home. As he gets up, the terminal shows that for nearly dying and recovering his HP back above half, he receives a bonus of 1 vitality point. Smiling, he thinks, now that's something to celebrate. But the next moment, it seems like his stomach isn't too happy. He thinks that the first order of the day is finding food and water, and the second is gaining more experience. Looking at the terminal, he realizes that the higher he levels up, the easier it will be for him to survive. So feeling refreshed with motivation, he says, let's go. Sometime later, he faces something and says, Believe me when I say this. Then he prepares an attack on that poor little frog, saying that he didn't want to do this. Our hero gains 1 XP while getting completely covered in frog slime. Running off happily, he finds another unlucky frog and goes after it, telling frog number 2 to get over here. He chases it, saying he needs its XP when he trips over a rock, falling face first into a puddle, while the little frog runs for its life. He lifts his head excitedly, saying, "Wait, this is," and floats there half naked, thinking that he'll never be thirsty again. Sometime later, he walks through the forest shouting, "Hello, portal, where are you? I need to go home." He crouches looking at that little pond, wondering if maybe it's around there. But while asking if the portal is there, a bizarre creature appears, showing its sharp teeth at him. He keeps walking, checking his terminal, and realizes that MP refers to magic, so he wonders if he could use magic. Suddenly, he crouches and tries to cast a Hadouken, but realizes it doesn't work. He's just making a fool of himself. A bit further ahead, he finds a really chubby frog. He approaches it like the mighty frog hunter he is, and the frog looks a bit unimpressed with our hero, but still turns into 1 XP for him. Sometime later, he tries to move the leaves with his magic, but it seems a little non-existent. So he heaves up on that branch and grabs the fruit with his hands anyway. He realizes he's still monstrously hungry, and that stomping on frogs isn't giving much boost to his XP. He knows he's nowhere near leveling up and thinks he needs to think bigger than frogs. Suddenly, he hears a sound nearby. He turns, asking what that could be. He sees that bird flying away and thinks, "There goes my XP." Rob stays there killing frogs, thinking it was a massacre, and that he feels kind of dumb about it. The terminal shows that he gained a passive skill in swordsmanship, which makes him proficient with swords and sword-like weapons. Rob says that apparently when you've never held a sword in your life, all you need is a little practice to go from level 0 to level 1. He realizes he's still monstrously hungry, and that stomping on frogs isn't giving much boost to his XP. He knows he's nowhere near leveling up and thinks he needs to think bigger than frogs. Suddenly, he hears a sound nearby. He turns, asking what that could be. He thinks he's found the Holy Grail, the cutest Holy Grail he's ever seen. He just needs to make his sword fly beautifully over there, thinking that a squirrel could put him on top. That's an infected furious squirrel, level 3, and realizing that he thinks to scratch that. It's not cute. That disgusting thing jumps at him while he screams, "Oh, the hell, why?" Catching the thing midair, he smacks it upside the head, throwing it against a tree where it crashes completely. The terminal shows that he gained 10 XP for defeating that enemy, while he suffers with his hand full of creature remains. But he gets excited when he immediately reaches level 3, gaining 5 more attribute points. Joking, he says, "Take that. Who's level 3 now? Not you." Laughing at the dead creature, he says it's because now it's a pathetic level 0. The terminal says that his eyes have improved, gaining +1 to perception, and also grants a foraging skill, which is a sense for finding water and food and hunting for tracking prey. Satisfied, he continues his journey, leaving those disgusting remains dripping from the tree, when suddenly another bizarre squirrel with a crazy face jumps on him. But this one is a furious squirrel, level 4, also infected, and it lands right on our hero's head, hitting him squarely. Rob runs off screaming for the creature to get off him, until he finally manages to shake off that persistent monster. He starts running, but the creature gives him no rest, chasing him like a maniac. When our hero reaches a dead end, a cliff with nowhere else to go, he curses, asking if there's no protective wall in this fantasy world. Like a bullet, the creature slams into our hero's back, launching him off the cliff. Both he and the monster fall, screaming in desperation. Luckily, Rob manages to grab onto a branch, but the annoying creature isn't so lucky and keeps falling. Looking down, he says he needs to climb back up, if he can at least find better footing, or maybe he can just give up. He thinks, why not? His parents don't know where he is, and it's already been 2 days, which quickly turns into a week, then a month. He knows Jason will tell them what happened, but wonders if they'll believe him. He questions if he'll ever see any of them again. And if he doesn't, what will he do? Will he still be the same person he was when he left them? Crying, he thinks no. And of course, he can't just give up now. Or he can be brave, and he says this while drawing his sword. And that one way or another, he's going back home. The terminal shows that he gained a passive skill in climbing, which will let him climb better. And when he finally reaches the top, up there, he receives the skill, deep breathing, which allows him to recover stamina through breathing. Struggling to finish the climb, he manages to level his climbing from 1 to 2. Finally reaching the top, he can rest, gaining an extra point in dexterity for his quick reactions. Now able to breathe a little in peace, he says this place really wants to kill him. But it's definitely a beautiful place. With tears in his eyes, he thinks Jason would have loved to see this place. He thinks that one day he will tell him and also his family about all of this, while tears stream down his face. Suddenly, he receives a rare skill, melancholy resistance, which allows him to recover more quickly from situations like this. Crying, he thinks, no please, I don't want to lose this feeling. Devastated, he feels that it's a part of him, and that he can't just numb all of this. Then the terminal shows that this skill has been turned off. He misses them so much, knows they are waiting for him, and he's sure of it. On the day of the meeting, Malika teases the elf, who is trying to catch a fish with his hands, saying that he won't succeed like that. The young girl suggests that the other should hit the animal. Orntol seems to be having fun and says that he's in no hurry since it's a beautiful day. She agrees and adds that the forest feels peaceful and that she loves this place. Meanwhile, in another part of Exiton, Rob has a very different opinion from the elves and hates the forest. After all, he's struggling to deal with a wolf. The guy swings his sword to push the creature away while saying, give me a break, and apologizes to the animal for the beating he's about to give it. A terminal informs that it's a level 8 frenzied wolf and that it's infected, which is clearly noticeable from its skin. You know what? This doesn't even sound strange change anymore, the boy says to himself. The wolf leaps to attack him with its claws and goes for a bite. However, Rob strikes it, piercing through its torso. In the process, he ends up getting a scratch on his face. Right after, he drops his sword, and the beast collapses with a loud thud on the ground. Annoyed, the young man wonders how the wolf still manages to stand just fine and thinks it might be some fantasy version of rabies. As if the sword wasn't even there, the monster charges again. The boy greets it with a devastating punch. In fact, he throws several punches while the beast counters with swipes. Finally, one of the punches sends the animal flying, crashing down on its back in the grass. Taking advantage of the fact that his sword is still there, Rob delivers a finishing blow, which causes the creature to let out a huge sneeze. Staring at the wolf, the young man thinks that now is the moment. And indeed it is. The beast is defeated and the boy levels up to level 3, gaining 5 condition points and a passive skill. As the scratch on his face starts healing, he says, "This is weird, but that fight was fun." He completes the thought. The terminal shows how his stats are distributed on his character sheet, and he notices that he still has 5 unspent points. Wondering what to do with those points he received, he realizes he's close to reaching 30 vitality and decides to invest there, believing it might unlock something. By doing that, he now has 20% life regeneration per hour, and seeing that, he was hoping it would be a higher percentage. Then he uses 1 more point to raise his spirit to 20, and unlocks an active skill called Quick Thinking, which improves thought speed, though it can be exhausting if used for too long. Looking at his stats, now he really believes that the investment was worth it. All hyped up, the boy shouts to the forest around him, "Bring it on, wolves!" But not the infected ones this time. Continuing his cheerful hike, Rob hopes for normal animals since that way he could eat them. Suddenly, the boy comes face to face with the elf couple who had just caught some fish, and at first, they all get startled by each other. Truly happy, the man feels he found people and asks the terminal for information about the two. Orangel's terminal shows that he's level 10, a patrol elf, and that he feels terrified. Malika is level 9, a forest elf, and she is confused. The boy introduces himself and then asks their names, but not wanting to wait, the elves run away desperately from there, and one of them shouts, "Foreign." Waving his arms frantically, our hero asks the two to wait and come back, but they ignore him and keep running like their lives depend on it. Not understanding the reason for such confusion, the young man replies as if he were speaking to them. "Well, it was nice meeting you, Foreign." Now he feels sad because that was the first sign of people, and they ran away. The boy shouts into the forest, asking if anyone is out there, be it an elf or even a wolf. He returns to where the defeated creature was, sits in front of it, and says it would be wonderful to have someone to talk to. Then he complains to the RP system to make his voice louder. He gets no response, so returning to his insignificance, he says he's going back to his cave. But then a nearby bush is slightly shaken. As the boy starts heading back to the shelter, starving, it seems that 2 elves are secretly watching him. Dragging his sword on the ground, he grumbles about why everything always falls apart. Suddenly, an elf fires a blue arrow that flies at full speed. Our boy loses his balance on a rock in his path, and when that happens, it causes the arrow to narrowly miss its target. When it hits a tree near him, Rob breaks out in a cold sweat. Realizing how powerful that arrow was, it could have blown a huge hole in him. He runs off in desperation, wondering who the hell is shooting so many arrows at him. One of them hits him directly in the leg. Fortunately, the arrow goes through, but it leaves a painful wound on his thigh. Then an elf jumps from behind the boy while unsheathing his sword. Our hero reacts fast enough to grab his own sword and block the attack. For a while, there's a series of strikes from both sides. Between one blow and another, the boy asks for the attacker's identification, and the terminal shows a level 48 ranger with the phrase "a flash in the dark" and the status determined. Rob pleads for God's sake for the attacker to understand him. Suddenly, a loud roar echoes beside them. While the elf says something in Elvish that he can't understand, the boy realizes the situation just got way worse. The terminal reports that this is the Lord of the Forest, an ancient creature that has been at the top of the food chain for a long time. It is level 42 and has the infected status. Our boy is thrown against a tree and hits his head. On the verge of fainting, the boy struggles to stay awake to figure out how to solve this problem. His problem is divided into 2. Either the bear wins and devours him, or the elf wins and defeats him afterward. The creature will haunt his nightmares, but it would give a ton of experience, possibly enough to take down the level 48 ranger if necessary. Feeling motivated, Rob tells himself that he will level up and that he needs this. As he grabs his sword, he realizes that he really wants to join that fight, and then he leaps to drive his weapon into the infected creature that is giving the elf a hard time. He hits the bear square in the head. With the creature's defeat, he levels up several times, gains a lot of stats, and also receives +2 dexterity and +1 endurance because of how the feat was accomplished. The terminal now officially shows that the bear is down, and our boy strikes a tired hero pose on top of the beast. Tired, yes, but very happy for landing the finishing blow, and he feels a special kind of satisfaction because of it. As he picks up his weapon, he reflects that sometimes it feels like it's the only good thing about this place. Messing with his stats, he boosts vitality by 20, bringing it up to 50, which increases his regeneration and grants him an active skill. What a wonder, with that victory, he was able to use 20 delicious points and unlock Life Surge, which quickly restores 30% of his maximum life, and now he's level 8. Rob approaches the elf and says, "You tried to defeat me. I didn't do anything, and you, like everyone else in this godforsaken forest, wanted to take me down," the boy adds, upset with the situation. After getting 4 levels from the monster, the boy wonders how much he'd get from the ranger, but the elf starts mumbling something in Elvish while raising his hand. The boy starts bringing his his sword down, striking just a few centimeters from the man's face. But Rob gives up, saying he won't do it. He states that he didn't come this far to do something like that to a person, and adds that he won't let this world win. After turning his back and starting to walk away, he tells himself that he's still Rob. At that moment, his stats show that his current statuses are melancholy, a small level up boost, and moderate loneliness. And yes, he is truly feeling pretty sad. Trembling and looking at his hands, the boy wonders what's happening, because he almost finished the elf. He puts his hand on his head and tells himself that he would never do that. Wandering aimlessly through the forest, the boy feels lost and has no idea what to do, while trying to push away the thought of what he almost did. He walked for so long without realizing that he almost fell into a hole and sees that it is something new. It looks like a haunted house waiting to happen, or worse, a haunted hole. Rob knows he should turn his back and leave, but maybe the portal that takes him back home could be there. After arriving in that strange dark place through another portal, the exit might be over there. As he looks down, he gulps because of something, and he suddenly remembers the creepy chain. That chain that wrapped around his arm and pulled him while he was at school into this fantastical and adventurous world. "I won't let fear control me, since I am going to face it again if I want to go back home," said Rob. And so our hero begins his long descent into the unknown while recalling happy memories to push away fear and stay focused. During his careful descent, the rope of the ladder snaps. The rope completely tears, making him fall in free fall. And this is that desperate moment when a movie plays in everyone's head. After a thud, the young man lies sprawled on the ground, reflecting that he wouldn't have survived that fall if he were still at level 0. It seems like he's managing to handle the place. Then the boy thinks it's great that nothing has shown up yet trying to eat him. Suddenly, someone screams the name Menta, and our boy thinks there is someone in danger not far from him, and he runs toward the sound of the voice as fast as possible. He notices that further ahead there is a light on. There is a lit torch there, and also what appears to be a door that emits a strange red light right ahead. The young man approaches and opens the door to peek at what is happening. Frightened, Rob covers his mouth with his hand upon seeing the scene there. An elf, or what's left of one, lies on the ground, and his final moments seem to have been filled with deep terror. Observing that poor creature, the boy starts to think about something. Once again in desperation, he remembers that he almost did the same as someone earlier. Now crouched beside him, he begs for forgiveness without even knowing why he is doing it. No one deserves to end up like that. Could I do something, or do elves perform some kind of rite of passage? Rob wonders. He questions whether the creature prefers to be buried, cremated, or anything else, as if the elf could hear him. But the only answer he gets in return is the silent and pained expression of the other. Continuing his monologue, he says that he met other elves and that he's having a better conversation with this one than with the others in the previous situation. As he approaches the elf, closing his eyes and believing that this situation didn't happen recently, the shadow of another person appears behind him. The person tells our hero not to dare move while placing her sword close to his neck, and completes her threat with, "If you do, you'll lose your head." The young man, after raising his arms in surrender, asks if the lady knows how to speak English. The elf girl starts crying for her friend Menta, and while it seems like she's going to touch her sword, she says, "Human," accusing him of having done that to her friend. Rob wonders how there are so many people in that world who are abnormally strong as he trembles with fear. In the next moment, the woman grabs him by the neck. "Monster, why did you do this to him?" she asks, shaking with so much anger. The girl commands the boy to answer her or she will finish him. Trying to survive, the young man replies that he is already defeated. She then pushes him to the ground with all her strength. Crying openly, the girl demands an answer. With tears falling down his face and struggling to breathe, Rob asks the terminal to perform an identification. His own status shows melancholy and a high level of terror. The elf unexpectedly releases him, and the guy lets the weight of his body drop to the ground. Finally, our hero begins his explanation by saying that he found the boy like that, but the girl interrupts him and tells him to leave that place while he is now sitting with his hand on his neck. After he gets up and starts walking, the woman falls to her knees next to Menta, saying his name as if it were a whisper to the wind. It seems like it was her calling him earlier. I should leave this place, Rob thinks. The elf girl says that it was her fault because she should have paid more attention since she looked back and her friend was no longer there. With his hand between hers, she wonders who will argue with her for jumping headfirst into a fight. He was the only one who cared and asks the entity Lothring to hear her prayers. "I will take him home so his soul can rest," the girl concludes. Then she grabs something like a cloak and spreads it over his body, covering him. Someone asks if they can help with anything. Rob is still standing there watching the elf's entire monologue. The girl feels furious for having to repeat herself. She looks back at Menta again, full of sadness. "You disgusting, weak, vile creature who can't save anyone, that's all you are." The woman tries to pour out all her pain toward humans. As she slowly approaches, Rob agrees with her statements. Everyone clearly thinks the boy is a monster, and maybe they're right, but he still wants to help the woman take her friend home. For a moment, as the elf is in her arms, she looks thoughtful, and finally agrees to the help he offers. But the elf explains that this does not make the two of them friends, it just means she's accepting his assistance. Our hero extends his hand and introduces himself, trying to steer the conversation in a lighter direction. Still holding the young man in her arms, she politely replies and says her name is Kara. The terminal informs that Rob has gained a passive skill called diplomacy, which makes him more capable of dealing with situations through conversation and body language. As the girl puts her greatsword on her back, the boy mentally reviews the entire entire long and tense moment he just went through since he decided to descend into that hole. Rob says he doesn't remember that place being so big while helping the elf with her dead friend. Kara explains that dungeons tend to change over time. She adds that this is what she's heard, and our hero assumes that this must be her first time in a place like this too. The girl says that dungeons are rare near her village, and she is grateful to Lofren for that. Rob asks if she came there just to take a look. Kara says that's not it, it's just that she wanted to be useful to her village since they like to remind her otherwise. She talks about Menta, and in the end says it doesn't matter. Rob tries to comfort her and says he knows what it's like to feel like an outsider. Not fully understanding, she asks if he's trying to be empathetic with her, calling him human. He says yes and asks what's the problem with that, explaining that she's the first person he's met out here, that others either try to kill him or run away, and that he feels lonely. Kara corrects him and says that she tried to kill him. Rob agrees and says they've left that behind, or at least he hopes so. He also says to consider it pending until they get out of that place. Then our hero says that sounds like something at least and says he needs to ask. He still doesn't understand how a dungeon can even be. When suddenly something interrupts him, looking down at something slimy under his foot, he asks what is this? Suspicious, Kara asks if he's sure he's a human, and our boy asks what that's supposed to mean. She explains that the stories from her village talk about humans, and that they are not very merciful. And she means how can anyone forgive the human race after? At this point, Rob interrupts and asks, after what? Startled, she asks if he doesn't know. Rob explains, Kira, I've never seen another human besides me. She questions if he has no knowledge of the expulsion or the cataclysm or what happened in Ixaton, but Rob asks if she's just throwing random words into the wind. Spreading her arms, Kara says that Ixaton is right here. Our boy asks if that's the dungeon. Irritated, she insults him, calling him Rafa Fruit, and says no, it's the name of this region. Rob says it's good to know this place has a name, but asks what the hell is a Rafa Fruit. The girl, a bit impatient, says it's a slightly poisonous fruit. Excited, our hero says that he ate one of those, so Kira asks if anyone's ever told him he's kind of weird, and he replies all the time. She asks if he's not from here, then where did he come from? Looking ahead, he says he came from a place called Earth, and Kira says she's never heard of that city, but he explains it's not a city, it's a planet. Kira is shocked by this information and asks what. Rob asks if it's not normal, if no one else has ever fallen from a portal after being dragged by chains, and adds that if not, then he's the lucky one. The elf then asks if he didn't grow up in Elatra and explains that's the name of this world in case he didn't know. Rob replies that now he does and thanks her. She continues and says the ramifications of this are, Kara says that he then has no relation to the humans who once inhabited this world, and that makes her feel relieved at least a little, and asks why he went into the dungeon. Without even thinking about the answer, he says it was to face his fears. Curious, she starts to say that he came there for the level. Then Rob says that by her tone of voice, it sounds like something kind of bad. So he asks why they stopped, and the girl, agitated, demands to see his stat sheet again, and that it's not a request. Tense, he says okay, anything to keep her sword in its sheath, and summons his character sheet, making a terminal appear in front of him. Awkwardly, he tells her to go ahead and judge him, and that he's weak. Breathing a sigh of relief, she says that his ability for fast level evolution is still low, and she feels grateful for that. Rob thinks about this accelerated evolution, and that he never noticed it before, and that they have a term for it, a kind of addictive feeling. He asks what happens if that gets higher than it is now. Then the elf replies that it would make her reconsider the decision not to kill him. A bit scared, he says he got the message. Kara asks if he knows that he can put points into a category other than just vitality. And our boy says he didn't want to die, there were wolves over there. There were also poisonous fruits, and that bear. Suddenly they crouch down, and the elf tells him to stay quiet, asking if he heard that. She tells him not to move and trembling. He asks her to tell him there's nothing above him, because he feels like something is above him. Then she smashes a giant spider against the wall. Terrified, Rob asks what the hell that is and activates his identification, seeing that there are lots of level 3 dungeon spider hatchlings and some level 6 ones. Kara says it looks like he's going to add another item to his complaint list. Scared, he says there's nowhere they can run to and that they're everywhere. Suddenly, one of the spiders jumps on him. The elf jumps in front of him, slicing the spider in half, and says that he's going to have to fight. Rob says he's not sure this is the time for it, but he hates spiders just like Indiana Jones hates snakes. He's like that, but with spiders. Kara asks who that is, and our hero explains that he's a guy from a movie that has a great theme song, but in the next moment says never mind. The girl apologizes to Rob, who hates spiders, but says he should start grabbing his sword soon, because she can't fight this brute alone. Our hero stands there trembling while the spiders keep closing in. Kara tells him to watch his head as she strikes a spider coming toward him. She keeps attacking, saying the first one to fly is the first to die, and activates his circle of death skill. She adds that 20 are down, now just another 100 to go the same way. She continues swinging her sword at the spiders, counting 10-9. She grabs one with her own hands while throwing her weapon a 7. She hits a spider dead on that was further away. Then she starts running toward her weapon again, counting until she gets to 2. She pulls her weapon from inside the monster, and activates her circle of death skill again, spending a bit more for MP. Annihilating the spiders, she shouts that this one is for Menta. In the middle of that battle, she reaches level 28 and gains some more stat points, getting really excited. She finally remembers our hero and turns around to look for the human. Then at the far end, there's a pile of spiders, and from inside, you can hear a very human-like scream. He seems to be in a rage, attacking the spiders mercilessly. Tense, Kara watches him and thinks that he's lost. Then suddenly he reacts and runs past her, attacking the spiders. He slices a spider that was on top of her, and Kira says that she had already seen it, but thanks him anyway. Our hero doesn't answer and continues frantically killing the monsters while she stays tense and asks you. Surprised, she says he's a beast, so the stories the elders told were true. Desperate, Rob keeps fighting, wondering why this is happening, why there have to be so many spiders around. He eventually gets covered in venom and bitten by the spiders, and his poison resistance skill increases to level 2. Kara returns to the fight while our hero seems ready to collapse. More cruel spiders bite him mercilessly, and his poison resistance skill now increases to 3. They're in the middle of that swarm of spiders. He thinks this is hell. Being buried by dozens of spiders, he thinks he needs to get them off him, so the only option is he throws himself to the ground and starts rolling from side to side, crushing those things. The terminal shows that he has gained a new skill, Creepy Crawler Crusher, which due to his phobia gives him 5% more damage to insects, arachnids, and similar creatures. After that weird scene, he stops there, half scared and half tense, when suddenly a small spider starts approaching, and with a reflex punch, he smashes it, raising his new skill to level 2. He goes back into the fight and keeps crushing those things, raising his skill to level 3 now. He ends up gaining another new skill called Arachnophobia, which increases damage to crawling creatures by 50% and an extra 25% to spiders, because he hates them so much. In this process, he gets excited because he reaches level 9, gaining another point in resistance due to his hard work. Rob then approaches Kira and calls her. Trembling and covered in spider remains, he asks her if they are winning. He suddenly notices that the spiders are heading toward Menta's body, so he runs, screaming to defend him from that. Killing the creatures, he tells them to have respect for the dead, calling them idiots. Starting to enjoy the fight, he says he could use a little help over here. While punching a spider, he reaches level 10 and also raises his brawling skill to level 3. Dead spiders fall everywhere. Kara keeps slicing through them with her sword. Meanwhile, she stares at our hero. Smiling, he says, "Where's the life wave?" Looking at his arm and moving it, he realizes he's being healed. Kara calls the human and asks if he has overcome his bloodlust or if she'll have to put him out of his misery. Smiling with the sword to his neck, he asks, "Misery me?" And in the next moment, he gets a bit sad and confirms yes. He explains that he's definitely not craving blood and that a hot meal would be way better for sure. The elf says alright and kneels down to adjust her dead friend, adding that now that the danger is gone, they should get out of this dungeon, and she smiles at our hero. A good while later, they are roasting fish over a campfire. Happy with the situation, he asks if he can eat that every day. She looks at his stats and says it's a miracle he survived the poison, and his accelerated leveling is still at medium. She thought it would already be at moderate. Rob says he doesn't know what any of that means, but he knows this fish is the best thing he's ever had in his entire life. Kara tells him to consider it a symbol of gratitude because she doesn't know how she could have gotten Menta out of there without his help. Our hero says no, he should be the one thanking her for getting him out of what was definitely the worst experience of his life. But even in the forest, he was attacked by monsters. The elf says it's the infection. She explains that they don't understand the magic behind it, but it's spreading through all wildlife, creating abominations. Rob says that explains why everything around there tries to kill him, and speaking of which, he's ready to go whenever she is. Kara says that about that, maybe now is the right time to tell him that everyone in her village wants him dead and buried. Smiling, he says he already knew. He met Mr. Level 48. The elf says that first, she has to clean him up because she can't present him as a crazy wanderer. Our boy asks how she met her friend, and she says they always stole bread from the bakery together, that they were always in trouble together. She explains that she didn't have the best memories of her childhood and that her friend was the only good part. Menta took care of her. Rob says he's sorry to hear that. She continues, saying the village has its problems, but sometime later, they arrive at a closed gate, and she announces that this is her home. Our boy says that it seems like everyone goes to bed early in her town, but she corrects him, saying that's not it. Frightened, she says there isn't even a candelabra, nothing. She says something is wrong there. She activates her Step of the Wind skill and starts running through the city. Kara notices that everyone is inside their houses and wonders if the infection might have spread into the village. Punching one of the doors, she shouts for Riordan. He opens the door after a while and surprised asks Kara. Surprised, she asks about his leg and what happened to him. Riordan says the healing didn't help, he needs to rest, but it seems like she has something more urgent. Curious, he asks where Menta is. Sadly, she says with difficulty that he didn't make it. Kara says that a dungeon appeared in the forest and they wanted to go together to check it out, but they got separated, and when she found him, it was already too late. Riordan says, "May Lothran receive him and give him his gentle embrace," and she adds, "May he find peace in his sanctified halls." Then he asks to take him to him. He says they were attacked in the forest near the village, that the infection is growing aggressively every day. She says that explains the village lockdown and the injuries. Kara says she needs to warn him before they get there that she had help with Menta. Riordan asks if she means, and she finishes that he is a human. The elf notices that he stops and turns around. He asks if she knows that they tracked a human earlier as well, and that he was dangerously skilled. She explains that without the human's assistance, they couldn't have performed the funeral rites, and that if he talks to him, he'll see he's not a monster. Riordan says that if she insists on talking to him, then they will, but if he shows any threatening stance toward the village, his hand will release his sword. She agrees but says there's one more thing. She explains to him that the human is not from this world. Reaching the human, they find our hero who says I'm screwed. He thinks that she brought Mr. Level 48. Then she says to allow her to start the introductions and tells Rob that this is Riordan. Our boy says they've already met, and the elf confirms that yes, they've already met. Surprised, Rob asks if he can speak English too, and the elf explains that around here they call that language the common tongue, so he understood everything he said before. Tense, he thinks that talking to this guy is like talking to a wall. Extending his hand, he says he's happy they can meet again under different circumstances, but the guy replies that he isn't, and the elf calls his attention. Rob asks the man to help too, and that everything in this world has been so hard. He says he's lost and scared and almost died many times, and that figuring out this world is like solving a puzzle without any clues to please. He confesses that he needs help, says he knows there was a fight between humans and elves before, but he swears he's not a threat. If not, then point him to the nearest human settlement and he will leave as soon as possible. Riordan asks if he's serious that he's not from this place, and he answers that definitely not, asking what the problem is. Kara says there are no human settlements, not here and not anywhere, as far as they know. Terrified, he hears that he is the last remaining human. Sometime later, they are walking through a graveyard, and Rob asks what happened there. Feeling the sorrow, Riordan says it was the war. The cost of it is never worth the victory. He remembers the combat of a huge human killing several elves, evolving to level 33. He says it was families, it was friends. Everyone perished in that war. That each one of those stones represents thousands of deaths. Surprised, our hero asks if that's thousands of humans. With a severe look, Riordan says it was thousands of elves, killed by humans. Rob asks if humans did that, and the elf explains that there are no limits to their violence. In the end, all the other races united to defeat the humans, and at first they gave it beautiful names, but in the end we call it the cleansing. Riordan asks how else he would call the total extinction of people and the loss of more than half of the remaining allies, not just soldiers, people. He adds that what's left is broken, a world in shambles. The elf asks if a human has nothing to say, that even a gasp of horror would be more than appropriate now. Surprised, he says that none of this feels real, and he thinks that this is also what the humans from his world do. Riordan explains that they didn't just lose each other, they lost who they are in the process, and even if they think they survived, they didn't come out of this without scars. From the beginning to the end, a decade of service, fighting even when he wanted to curl up in a corner and let the worms take him, and all he got was that. Then he yells that he took from him his means of surviving. The boy says he wasn't even there and made half of his skills useless since he can't use his false hand. Kara interrupts and tells Riordan that's enough, that she can tell him the rest. Worried, he asks if there's even more. Determined, the elf says he wants to tell it all, every crime, every child that humans slaughtered. But the elf girl insists, saying that's enough, that they're done for tonight, and she believes everyone needs to rest. Finally, he says he will follow Kara's advice because tomorrow will be a big day. Rob asks what happens tomorrow. Riordan says he will be presented to the elders for judgment, and from the story he's heard, he should know they're not kind. Or, he has another option, he can leave this village now and never return. He says for the human to choose his fate, that he will grant him this mercy. Our hero seems to be having some kind of nightmare, then wakes up scared, saying no. He finds himself on a couch and thinks that for a moment he forgot he's trapped in a fantasy world, but it turns out elves here live in medieval mansions. He hears something and walks down the hallway. He arrives at Kira, who was crying at a table in the kitchen. Worried, he asks if she's okay, and the girl says yes, she just couldn't sleep. Smiling, he says neither could he. She tells him to sit down, that she'll make more tea. Kara apologizes for the small room and says this is what her junior ranger salary can afford, but the boy says he could totally live there. And she asks if he lives like a poor person in his home world. Rob explains that he's a student there, so yes. The girl serves the tea to our boy. Kara apologizes for her curiosity. She says she can barely imagine how this whole ordeal must be for him. But Rob says it's okay, that he's barely processed it, so anything just simmers below the surface, gradually building up until one day, it explodes into a mental breakdown. Not fully understanding, the girl says that sounds healthy. He says now he thinks he understands why she wanted to kill him when they first met. Kara says it's not like she walked out of the cleansing without scars, that she didn't fight on the front lines, but she lost her friends and family. Menta was the only one left. They wanted to be ranger partners after graduation, and she's not exactly a fan of humans. But meeting him made her realize that not all people are responsible for the sins of their kind. She adds that he's a human, but that wasn't his war. And our hero says he can feel that not everyone in her village will come to the same conclusion. Kara says she hopes they'll change their minds when they see him, but it's like they're climbing. Rob says he's already climbed a peak, so repeating that performance might not be a problem. Surprised, she asks if that's true, and how high he went, and how much his climbing stat increased, and our hero asks, you really like stats, don't you? She asks about his, and says it's just for survival. Then she asks how he reached the peak. Rob says he fell, and she says she's starting to understand his 50 vitality at level 8. Kara says, so Rob, the guy who fell off a cliff and survived, have you made your decision? Getting more serious now, he replies that yes, he has. The next day, someone wearing a cloak walks through the streets of the city. That person walks silently along the path, and on the terminal, it shows that he gained a stealth skill, which will allow him to move discreetly, but will consume 1 stamina per second of use. Then finally, he arrives at the door of a huge place. He calmly walks through the doors. From the elders' table, someone asks who this is, and another asks if he can recognize him, telling him to remove the hood. Our hero mentally compares himself to a cowboy character. He thinks they look shocked, just as he expected. The elders are mages with levels ranging from 41 to 51. Rob asks that before they identify him, they allow him to introduce himself. They start saying things like, disgusting, by the gods, a human. What is this human doing here? And this is Duran's fault. Until suddenly, Riordan lets out a loud whistle. One of the elders asks why he's standing there, that even with a broken leg, he can still knock him down. Tadao says it's not necessary, that it seems the human made that choice, and he is here for his judgment. The elder says their judgment is to remove that human from there, preferably with his scimitar. And our hero says, Rob. He says his name is Rob, not human, and it's nice to meet all of them. Kara, standing in the corner, smiles at that. Riordan says what they need to know is that Rob is not from this world. He was teleported here a week ago. The elders seem to reflect among themselves. Then one of them starts speaking, Rob the human. The man asks what a cataclysm is. Rob says he doesn't know, but sounds bad. He asks what the currency is, and Rob answers, dollar, among other test questions. Then the elders go back to debating among themselves. The one who asked the questions thanks him for his honesty, and says to the other that it seems there's legitimacy in his claims, and she replies that they will assume for now that he's telling the truth, but he needs to be aware that Rob says he is, that they told him what the humans of this world did. The elder woman asks why she should think twice about sparing his life. He says he could apologize on behalf of humanity if that would help, but that would be an empty apology, and he thinks everyone in that room knows it. He explains there are two reasons why. The first is because he wasn't there. He says he can't even begin to comprehend the pain it caused them, and doing so would be nothing less than an insult. And the second reason is the same. He wasn't there. He says he's a human, but not one who was part of the cleansing, and he refuses to share the guilt with those who did it. Then the elder asks if he's saying they have no business with each other, so why did he appear before them? He says that if he can't go back to his world, he has nothing better than being part of their community, and the elder says he's just seeking shelter from the wolves. Then our hero confirms that's true, but also that this is the closest thing to home he knows, that there are roads, buildings, and people here. He adds that he can tell there are good people here, and it would be nice to become friends with them. The elf girl and our hero glance at each other smiling, and speaking sincerely, he says that all he wants is a chance. The elders look at him in an overwhelming way, and the terminal shows that his diplomacy skill has increased to level 2. Rob wonders if he really just did that, as the elders now look at him less harshly, and he questions if he actually managed to convince Riordan. One of the elders claps his hands and says it was a vibrant speech, and our hero smiles in relief. When one of them says it's sad, but she must tell him that she will vote for his execution, our hero curses the situation in his head. She says she wants to execute him, no matter how appealing his argument is. Tense about this, he tells himself to stay cool, that they expect him to fall into one of the stereotypes humans are known for. Upset about it, he asks if he may know why. She says that seeing him makes her want to scream and pull her hair out, that his mere existence reminds her of everything she lost, and she's sure many on this panel feel the same. The elders look at each other while our hero thinks that if they all play follow the leader with this vote, he's screwed. Rob says goodbye to the world and to any chance of going home when one of them starts to speak, and finishes by saying that he supposes he should vote for him to stay. He thinks that whoever this guy is, he's now his fourth best friend. The woman gets upset and demands that he explain himself. The old man says the truth has been spoken. He'd been thinking about letting the human stay for a while, and his words only solidify that. He says the human has a lot to teach them about his world, and he seems more agreeable with theirs. Frustrated, the woman says he always had a soft spot for humans, and that should be considered treason. The middle elder says that it's enough, she has something else important to discuss, his status effect. Then she asks him to read it out loud for them, and our hero thinks this must be a trap. He looks at his new friend seeking support, and says that it's the same thing as yesterday, melancholy, hope. Lastly, his leveling is now high. Rob looks at them wondering what those looks mean, if he has insulted someone or something like that. That elder says that looking at his face, it seems he doesn't understand the gravity of the high leveling skill. Our hero thinks that Kira mentioned this before and wonders if that's why she wanted to check his status, because high leveling is dangerous. One of the elves asks if the old man could educate him on this subject. Then he explains that here in this world, all living things are motivated to level up. That's the nature of things, and level rests power. And who doesn't want power? He says that every intelligent being likes to level up, and rightly so, but humans, they need to level up for them. Then he corrects himself, for you, this is an obsession. Rob wonders if that's what he was feeling, this desire. He continues and says that for a human, the desire for leveling cannot be surpassed by anything else, not food, not love, nothing, once they taste it. Rob says that what he is describing sounds like a drug. The old man corrects him saying addiction, and the fact that it's listed in his status means the effects have already begun. Our hero is in shock because of this. In panic, he thinks that it's true, that this is natural, that leveling up makes him feel good, that leveling up makes him feel really good actually. He feels something good like he has never felt in his entire life. Rob asks how, since he was only level 1 a week ago, and the elder asks what level he is now. He answers 10. She says that humans level up quickly. She tells him to look at himself, says that he had to kill some things to level up fast. She knows he hesitated before, but now. Our hero looks at Riordan and thinks that he almost killed him, that he almost killed Riordan because of the experience. He realizes that he had never considered killing anyone on Earth, not even frogs. He would never think of it, and wonders what will become of him. Suffering, he asks how he can get rid of this, but one of the elders says that he cannot, and that once it appears on his sheet, it never goes away, and the old man says that at the level he has now, it's manageable, but the higher the level, the more compulsive it becomes. Here we have a reason why humans send the afflicted at this level to the northern lands to fight until death. Rob says that he could never go that far. She continues saying that all of them think that way, and those who are lost in this addiction also lose their ability to choose peace, and their violence grows. The other elf says that she will never trust that corruption on anyone's sheet, and that she cannot accept someone in their village who could lose themselves in a bloodthirsty rage. Trembling and shaken, he says that then he gives her permission to take him down. He adds that only if she sees any sign that he is losing himself asks if she said that the skill will never disappear, then he will keep it there. Pointing to the elf, he says that if he fails, Riordan can kill him. The old elf asks if he would accept that, and our hero says that he doesn't want to hurt anyone. Riordan says that he witnessed the human killing the Lord of the Forest and gaining 4 levels in an instant, and that he is still limited to moderately high leveling. The old man says that gaining that amount of levels at once could put any human into an advanced stage. Riordan adds that somehow this guy can suppress his need and keep his skill at a moderate level. The woman is still upset, asks if the elf was supporting him, but he answers that he was only stating the facts. Rob thinks that he must remember to bake a pie for the level 48 elder after this because he really secure and well. The elder says it's time to settle this with a vote. The old man says he votes for him to live, the other elder says he does too, someone votes for his death, and another says that he agrees with Alessia, that he doesn't belong in that place. Our hero gets tense thinking that only one vote remains. The last elder says that their village already has enough problems with the growth of the infection, and he is another point of agitation. Suddenly, a sword strikes the ground, and Kira, irritated, says that she has been just a silent spectator to this rehearsed farce. She says that he has proven he is acting in good faith, and he will continue doing so. The elder says that the girl didn't fight on the front line, so she didn't see the brutality of humans firsthand. Kara says no, but her parents did, and they taught her better than this, to judge by a person's actions and not. At this point, the elder interrupts and tells her to be careful. Annoyed, she asks why if she's going to deduct it from her salary, since it's already a pittance. Our hero looks at his friend and says, it's true. The elf asks what that was, and he answers that it bothers him that she gets paid so little. She clearly works hard and is a passionate member of society. And more important than all of that, it bothers him that it bothers her. If she didn't care, maybe he wouldn't care either, but she does care. Rob then says, surprise, look at that, I'm capable of basic empathy. He says that if they gave her a decent salary, she could have a house to be proud of. Even though he thinks her house is beautiful, she gets embarrassed and asks him not to talk about it. The elder says that simple compassion and empathy are all she wanted to see. Then she finishes by welcoming the human Rob to the village. Sometime later in the village, a ritual is taking place. There in the middle, Riordan stands before everyone and Menta's body. Someone says that as long as there were only a few rangers in Ixaden, he never felt the way he did with Menta in their ranks, and that his good nature was felt by everyone, as well as his desire to protect. Rob thinks that the last funeral he attended was his grandmother's. He thinks he's surprised they let him come. Our hero feels like he should say something. Riordan says that if anyone wants to say a few parting words, now is the time. As the elf approaches, someone says that they have stood there many times. Rob realizes it's him, the elder who supported him, then he says that this wasn't her fault. The old man says he is quick to defend a friend, but not to worry, he's not blaming her, and asks if he knows why this village has no name. Our hero says he was wondering about that, and the old man says it's a sordid story of bureaucracy. He explains that the cataclysm destroyed everything, including their way of life. Every person there, every war orphan, came from one of the 5 cities or from somewhere else. Practically every elf left in Ixaden lives here now. Then came the collective sense that deciding what to call the new home could prove impossible. Kara refuses the handkerchief to wipe her tears. The old man continues, saying that each of them wanted to name it in honor of everything that was lost. But the fact is that each one lost something different. So this village remained nameless, and they found each other, then formed new families, and now they have lost those as well. Kara says that he may not have shared the same blood, but he was her brother, and that they found their fragments in each other, and with each passing day they became whole. Falling to her knees, she asks what she will do now that he is gone. Our hero feels that pain and almost steps forward to her, but the elder says to let her grieve. Sad, she wonders how she could ever feel whole again. Rob keeps watching her, sharing her pain. Sometime later, a few people are carrying the body of their friend to the cemetery. Rob, who is helping carry the coffin, looks at his friend and she tells him not to ask, that she's fine. But he thinks he can imagine what she's feeling. If it were Jason, he wouldn't be in any condition to say goodbye. He wonders if he could ever understand. He wonders if Menta always had that mark on his face. But in the next moment, he's startled and thinks, oh no. Suddenly, the boy opens his eyes. He asks if anyone else saw that, or if he's in one of his weird nightmares, and Riordan says yes. Kara screams for her friend Menta, who is now on the ground. As she starts running toward him, our hero holds her back and tells her not to go, says that's not Menta, and tells her to look. That thing starts spreading through the boy's entire body. Drawing his sword, he wonders what this parasite is. Riordan says it's a flesh eater, and says they've never seen one outside the dungeon. One of them screams and says they are heading for the village. In the sky, several killer and flesh-eating crows appear, ranging from levels 4 to 28. Our hero tells Riordan to go, that they need him, but the elf asks how they will manage, and Rob says they can handle it. Before leaving, he asks him to make sure to take her home. Then, in the next moment, Menta rises as a flesh eater, and his friend, trembling, wonders what is happening to him. That creature roars and leaps toward Kira. Suffering, she begs Rob to stop, but he apologizes, saying that isn't Menta anymore. Then he strikes the monster and tells her to be careful, so those worms don't touch her. That monster, who was once Menta, screams, and throws himself at Rob, grabbing him. It manages to throw our boy to the ground, slamming him against a tombstone. With a trembling voice, she tries to speak to her old friend, saying it's her, Kira. Crying, she asks if he doesn't recognize her. The monster looks at her, twisting all over. That mass of worms starts taking over the elf's body. Kira, trembling, tries to speak, begging him not to do this. But at that moment, Rob appears, grabbing the monster from behind. saying not to go so fast. But the creature has exceptional strength and throws our hero to the ground again with force. It grabs him by the collar and starts lifting him once more. Then it raises him and begins to strangle him. It tries to pull the boy closer to its mouth with a huge worm coming out. Rob struggles to push himself away, when suddenly Kira pierces her old friend with her sword. Crying, she apologizes for this, and with a swing of the sword, nearly cuts her ex-friend in half. Rob falls to the ground with his hand on his neck, and Kira kneels as well, still crying, saying goodbye to her old friend and wishing him to rest in peace. She cries, devastated, while our hero tries to comfort her. She thanks him for helping her, and he asks if that's what friends do. Then the girl answers yes, that's what friends do. The old man says that was the target, that they flew straight for it, that they were looking for the place of power, and wonders if the infected are capable of coordinating something like that. Riordan reports that Kira and the human managed to return safely, and the elder thanks Lutheran. He says the flesh eater took Menta very quickly, and that it seems the crystal is weakening. Riordan says it looks stable, but the old man asks for how long. He adds that the ranger units are depleted, and they have no choice but to gather the juniors for training. They say that Kira is a warrior, but that they've seen the damage she can cause. Then the old man asks about the human. Riordan says he's part of the village now, so they might as well train him too. He says Rob is strong, and with training he can become even stronger. The terminal shows that Rob is level 10, as well as his attributes and bleeding status. Our hero walks happily through the town, thinking about the words of welcome to the village, that those were the most beautiful words he's ever heard. Waving, he thinks, and look at that, no one's even throwing chairs at me. Kara asks Rob to keep moving, and he asks why. She explains that it's because things are starting to get violent. Nearby, the elder shouts for Kira and asks her to hurry. They approach the house and the girl pushes him inside. Then the old man slams the door shut behind them. Looking out the window, she says the crowd is leaving, at least for now. Riordan says the news has spread and the villagers already know there's a human in town. Kara crouches on the ground and our hero, worried, asks what's wrong, but she says she's fine. Frustrated, he says sure, obviously that she looks great, and she replies that there's a hungry mob coming for him, and he's lucky the funeral ended with this distraction. Rob says he can handle shouting and swinging fists, then asks if she wants to talk about what happened with Menta, but she answers no. Riordan says he's right to be concerned, that no one should have to say goodbye to a friend like that, and apologizes for not being more helpful. With a sad expression, she says it's okay. Then she says she'll go outside to make the crowd disperse, and the elf will go with her, and that if she wants to talk while they do it, they can. The elf thanks him. The old man becomes a bit tense, and our hero grows worried. Rob wonders why he's staring at him like that and feels like an insect on a petri dish. Finally, he asks what the name of the world he came from is. A little awkward, he answers that it's Earth. Surprised, the old man says Earth, and that it seems this makes him an Earthling. Embarrassed, he says yes, it seems so. Then the elder continues and says he has many questions for him. But our hero says that actually he has a few questions for him too, if he doesn't mind. The elder says of course, and that his name is Duran, and that they have a long night ahead, asking what he thinks about visiting the library. Upon arriving, he thanks him for defending the village, and our hero says he was happy to help, but mentions that Kira did all the work, that he himself was being rescued. The old man says he knows that his world is as curious to Rob as his own is to the elder, and that he should consider him a resource. He says that as beautiful as this place is, a part of him. Then he approaches and points to a spot on the globe, finishing by saying that there's a part of him that still wants to find his way home. Duran says he fears that's the one topic he has no knowledge of, that his arrival in this world is unprecedented. Rob asks about his friend, that he was almost dragged in as well, and asks if he thinks his friend might be okay. Duran says he's sure his friend is fine, and it's likely the portal closed right after he was caught. Rob thinks he's just saying that to make him feel better. Smiling, he tells the elder that he hopes he's right, and he adds that he can look through the old scrolls. Maybe there's something he has forgotten. Gratefully, Rob thanks Duran for that. But he says that he has 10 attribute points and doesn't know what to do with them, since in his world there are no levels, and they can't see their stats. Duran says, of course, the noble art of min-maxing, and that he can understand his concern. Our hero thinks that's an RP's term. How does he even know that here? He says it's a bit intrusive, but asks if he can show his character sheet. Rob asks if that's considered something personal in Ilara, and that Kira asked for it 5 minutes after meeting him. Suddenly, other people arrive, and he says of course she asked. The two have returned from their mission, and the girl looks a little shy. Duran asks about the crowd, and Riordan says they're gone. The girl says the elf looked at them and they left. Kara says she doesn't understand this hesitation with the sheets, that they can always see levels with identification anyway, and the old man asks her why strength 55 if she was at 50. The elf says she put points into strength again, and the girl says her build works well, but he tells her she relies too much on her danger sense, that they need vitality. Duran says it's nice that he mentioned it because he's seeing a similar problem. He apologizes if it sounds like an insult, but asks if Rob knows he can put points into other attributes. He explains that things happened, many things, that he was full of panic and would do anything to survive. The elder says he understands, and that he doesn't recommend putting points into magic, because to become a mage you need to invest heavily in magic and mind right from the start. Rob comments that so no fireballs for him. Duran says he seems disappointed and asks if magic is coveted in his world, and the boy says many would give anything for it, since there's no magic on Earth. He's shocked that people would mutilate themselves, and Rob explains that their only magic is pulling coins out of ears, and the old man says that's incredible. that he must be rich. Finally, he says that if he were Rob, he would put that point into perception, that this will heighten his senses and make him notice details. It will help with training alongside the juniors under Riordan's command. They ask if he's serious, and the elf replies that he starts tomorrow. Rob asks if that means he automatically becomes a ranger. Kara says no, thanks to Lothran, and apologizes to Riordan. The elf says he is satisfied with the choices he has made in his life. Durin explains that he will be able to change his class to ranger before the crystal. Doing this will grant him a new power and change the course of his life, and that he shouldn't decide quickly. Rob says that right now he just wants to decide what he's going to have for dinner, and asked about dexterity, the old man says it influences speed and reflexes. He asks if strength doesn't also make him faster by making his legs stronger. Both elves answer together that no, it does not. Durin says that for a build with so much vitality, his mind is actually quite high. He explains that it was 19 when he arrived there, and Riordan says that only a human would have such an advantage. Durin says it means he was a cultured man in his world. Happy with that, he thinks that the old man probably meant he's intelligent, and that he's never heard that before. Then he says that he's not a genius, he just had a normal education, like history and math, and the elder is surprised and then questions. Math? All excited, he thinks the guy actually believes he's a genius. Durin gets excited and says it would be great to have someone who could double-check his accounting books. Then he shows the boy the book. Rob points out that the correct number on that line should be 60,000. On the terminal, it shows that he gained a skill in mathematics, and that his speed for solving problems increased slightly. As he keeps going through the book, his mathematics rises to level 4. But suddenly, he puts his hand on his head and thinks, oh no. He looks at his terminal, and the leveling skill is still at medium. He thinks to himself, telling that thing to stay at medium forever, calling it a cursed thing. Kara asks if he's okay. He says he's just worrying about the promise of becoming a bloodthirsty monster, nothing major. Our hero asks if he can look at the library to research on his own. Durin says yes, but that everything is in Elvish, and Rob says he's not a Tolkien fan, apologizing. The elder explains that translation is a skill that can be unlocked by having a solid mind attribute and reading a lot, and the boy says he considers himself a bookworm. Sometime later, he is at the table reading something. The elder helps him with that reading. Rob puts a lot of effort into it and thinks it seems to be working. Suddenly, those letters that were previously incomprehensible in the book start becoming a bit clearer. Half desperate, he wonders why it feels like his brain is bleeding. Suddenly, his friend stands up saying there's something wrong with his nose. His nose is bleeding, and on the terminal, it shows that he took 9 localized damage to the brain. She gets scared, and Riordan quickly asks the elder Durin to use a healing spell, while the terminal shows that he took another 15 damage to the brain. Rob wonders if he's receiving the automatic translation skill or having an aneurysm, and then he takes another 23 damage to the brain. The two elves look at him shocked, and he thinks it's definitely an aneurysm, and takes another 35 damage to the brain. He starts to lose consciousness, and then it shows that he took another 51 damage to the brain. There it shows some confusing error messages, but right after that, he gained the automatic translation skill. The next terminal shows his sheet, but with the stats undefined, saying they are being reconfigured. A coin flies through the air, and someone says that this will determine the fate of humans, so they should place their bets. 3 people appear, one asks if this is serious, and another says they can't believe it. The coin falls to the ground, showing its face, and another asks if this is serious, and that Lux seems to be on his side. Later in a house, our hero sleeps, and on the terminal it shows that there was no permanent brain damage and an apology for his system error, granting him +1 to mind. He wakes up when he levels up to 11, gaining 5 more attribute points. Lying on the couch, he thinks that he just wanted to read. But the terminal shows that he has received the Elvish language translation skill. He thinks that looked like code and wonders if he might be trapped in some kind of virtual world. The next moment, the terminal shows that he is not in a virtual world. Surprised by this, he gets up looking around, asking what that was, when a voice thanks the gods. Kara comes over worried and asks if he remembers her name. Smiling, he says it's Kira, and that it's good to see a friendly face. She explains that he had brain damage, and that her face is never friendly, that he can ask anyone in the village. Rob says he doesn't exactly know what happened, but he apologizes if he scared them. She asks if he doesn't remember anything. Then he replies that he only remembers a whole lot of brain damage. Exasperated, she says he almost died and that he shouldn't joke about it. Trembling, she says that she means she doesn't want to bury 2 friends today. He apologizes and says that joking is just his way of coping, but it seems the system gave him the all clear. And unless the system is wrong or lying, he has no permanent brain damage. Kara says that's reassuring, that the system is never wrong or lying, and Rob says it seems to have a dark sense of humor. She gets alarmed and asks what he means if he spoke to it. Our boy says he wouldn't say it spoke, but that the notifications have a decent amount of sarcasm. Kara says he should keep that to himself, that saying the system is talking to him is a clear sign of mental illness. He says duly noted and asks if she can now explain to him exactly what happened. She explains that everything happened at once. The elder used his medical analysis magic, and she believes the phrase he used was that his mind was unraveling at a fundamental level, and he thinks that doesn't sound good. But he thinks at least he got auto-translation in the end, like a consolation prize. She says he was lucky Riordan found a healer quickly, and that he should have seen how fast he was even while injured. But now there's something more serious. Looking out the window, there's a crowd outside. Outside, we can see a mob of angry elves. Kara says they've been out there for hours, and Rob says at least they haven't burned the house down. She says they did try, so our hero asks if they really tried, and the girl confirms yes. She tells him to sit down, that she'll go fetch Riordan, and he'll make them all scatter. Then he says to take all the time she needs, that he'll just read, and she asks if he's really going to do that after almost dying, but Rob says he's sure he'll be fine. Thinking that it's better odds than he's used to, he grabs the book about the history of Electra. Kara says she'll be back soon, and if anything happens. Rob interrupts and says he'll scream, then she says that's perfect. He sits thinking like he'll finally be able to read about what really happened here, or if this is going to kill him. In the book, he goes to the part that talks about the cataclysm. He reads everything he can until he finally falls asleep on the sofa, while the people outside scream that they don't want humans on their land. Time passes, while the people don't stop shouting outside. Our hero wonders if they're still out there and wonders what kind of caffeine they're using. The people shout insults when Rob stands up and thinks that's enough. Going to the window, the terminal shows that diplomacy is a bad idea, and he tells it to shut up because it's not his supervisor. Outside, the elf says that he's awake, but as he can see, the crowd has found him again, and Riordan says it's creative, while the crowd keeps chanting loudly. They watch from behind as the crowd yells rhymes in protest, all aimed at the human being responsible for the things that happened and that he can't stay there. Suddenly, our hero opens the door and says, hey. He shouts that his name is Rob and that it's a pleasure to meet them, says that he loved the rhymes, but now they should shut their damn mouths because he needs to sleep. Then he slams the door without giving them time to protest. Smiling, the girl says that honestly, she would have done the same thing, and the ranger adds that he'll put some junior rangers to control the crowd. She passes through the people and asks him to make sure they don't throw paint on her house because she's still paying for it, and if he needs her, she'll be inside. Sometime later, now with a guard at the door of the house. Rob thinks that Kira passed out 2 hours ago, but he's still awake, and that he misses his white noise app. Suddenly, he hears a noise and wonders if it's the back door. The door starts slowly opening. Our hero grabs his weapon and heads over there, wondering where the guard might be. An elf is snooping around inside the house, and slowly enters holding a dagger. At that moment, Rob uses his identification. He realizes it's an elf, level 8, apprentice baker with the statuses of terrified and determined. Suddenly, he decides to show up and say hi. That little elf points the knife at him, trembling, while Rob asks if the boy really wants to do this. The next moment, the boy charges, screaming and wielding the weapon. As Rob throws a blanket over him, the boy shouts, "Farrell, this is for Farrell." The boy cuts the blanket with his weapon, but sees no one in that room. When suddenly our hero taps his shoulder saying he's right here. The young elf turns, attacking him, but Rob dodges easily. Right after, he grabs his wrist. The weapon falls to the ground. He pins both of the elf's hands to the wall while the boy tells him to do it quickly. Furiously, the boy says that he killed Farrell and that now he's going to kill him. Someone asks what the hell is going on there, when our hero simply throws the boy outside. Startled, he asks if she sleeps with her sword, but Kira says she won't answer that and asks if he needs help. But Rob, heading outside, says he's handling it. Approaching the boy on the ground, he says it's late. And now he tells him to go home, wash his face, and get some sleep. Kara asks what that was all about, and he answers that it was nothing, just a quick assassination attempt, and that maybe he should start sleeping with his sword now too. As he walks back, he says, let the scary human kill a child and prove he really is a monster. His friend puts her hand on his shoulder and says he's not a monster, but he keeps walking, not answering her. He sits down and says he read about the cataclysm. Says he knows that the humans were losing the war, so they created a powerful magical bomb to destroy the world, but that apparently they lost control and vaporized themselves with it. Says that even if this is elven propaganda, asks if she knows what's messed up, that the humans where he comes from are the same, just with different weapons. He turns to the side on the couch while his friend watches him. Kara says that everyone has a choice, and if that boy came there to kill him, he made a choice, but he didn't react with violence, he acted with empathy and understanding. She adds that he is a kind man and hopes he goes to sleep knowing that. The terminal shows his stats and also that he's super tired. When he remembers something important, he didn't wash his feet. The next day, someone asks if he's awake yet, and with terrible dark circles under his eyes, our hero says he didn't sleep. Kara replies that she didn't either and asks if he had nightmares. Smiling, he says he was just waiting for more assassins and jokes that she knows how it is, right? Annoyed, she says that was a serious offense and that they need to report it. Rob says to do it later, that it was just a boy who went too far, he doesn't want to be hard on him. With a wicked smile, she says that since he insists on making her life harder, he should grab his hood and sword because they're going to the crystal. Rob asks why the crystal, and she explains that it's time for him to choose his class. Sometime later, our hero says they're still looking at him like they want to kill him, and she says that if they try, she'll take care of them. Surprised, he asks if she would do that for him, and that it would make her an exile. She replies that he's overestimated her reputation here, if he thinks it's possible to make them like her any less, and that there's no one left for her to disappoint. Her mother and father are dead. Riordan is a mentor, not a friend, and Menta was the last one who liked her, but now he's dead, so. Smiling, asks if she knew he had a loneliness status not too long ago, and that it disappeared since he met her. And that means there's at least one person here who likes her. Kara says maybe he just doesn't know her yet, and that he saw how she killed Menta twice. Rob says that she's his third best friend, and she asks if she's still below the sword. The boy says he's thinking of naming it, but the elf says please don't do that. Sometime later, she announced that they had arrived, and our hero says that seeing up close now, it really is a huge crystal. Kara says that they don't know where it came from, has always been there, like a gift from the gods. It withstood the cataclysm explosion without a scratch, and it was brought here. Surprised, he asks how she knew he was going to ask, and the girl says she can read his mind. Desperate, he asks if it's true, but she smiles and says no. Excited, she asks if he knows what else she knows and says she knows which class he's going to pick. He asks if it's a permanent choice because he hasn't decided yet. She explains that it can change, but people don't do that because it slows down their progression, and if he wants to reach level 50, he should make a definitive choice as his first one. Rob asks about level 99, but she says that no one has ever reached that level, and most non-combatants stay around level 19 in their twilight years. Surprised, he says that she is level 28 and is as young as him. So Kira says she has fought more enemies than half the citizens of this village combined. He says he should choose the ranger class because that would be a good path to make everyone like him, and his friend says yes, but he won't pick that. She adds that he's going to pick berserker, and our guy starts thinking. Awkwardly, he says he's trying not to look like a crazed human craving elven blood. She smiles, saying she knows, but that he will pick it anyway. Rob asks if there's any trick to choosing, if he has to clap his hands or sing a song, and she explains that he just has to place his hand on the crystal, no formalities. She adds that then he just has to make his choice. On the terminal, it shows that the class selection is about to begin and a button to confirm. Our hero realizes that most of these classes seem more like jobs, and they seem peaceful, but he doesn't want to die, so he's going to reject those. He thinks about automatically getting rid of all the magic classes because he screwed up that chance in a big way. Not pugilist either, he already knows how to fight, but punching things with claws and teeth seems like a bad idea, and he wonders what the life expectancy of a class like that would be. He realizes that swordsman would be really cool, and that he loves his sword, and he's also already reached level 3 as a swordsman. Then it seems like he's made his decision. Rob looks pretty excited and satisfied, while his friend asks which class he picked. He replies that it's like he told her and knows that she already checked his attributes with her identification. Satisfied, she says that just for the record, she thinks berserker suits his build, and he thanks her while operating the terminal, and yes, he chose berserker. He receives a lifesteal skill, which is a level 3 berserker skill, healing 25% of the life from any damage he deals. He also receives the battle fever skill, which boosts his attributes, and blood for blood, which increases his damage as he loses HP. He says he just feels it's right, something to build, like a furnace that needs fuel, and asks her how she feels. Kara turns and says it's settled, then says they should go because Riordan is waiting for them. In a place nearby, several young elves are training. Our hero uses identification, and an elf tells them to stop because that's rude, but Kira says that they set their profile as public inside the village. Then he asks everyone to look over there because they have a new recruit. The young ones are not very happy to have a human around. Riordan continues and says that as they can see, he's not from here. Rob whispers that this is not the warm welcome he was expecting. His friend says he should look for friends elsewhere, that they are not very smiley. Smiling, he says they could say the same about her, but that he has seen her smile. Riordan says that now he looks different, and he knows everyone has complicated feelings about humans, but frankly, they need all the help they can get. One of them, annoyed, says that everything those guys did was complicated, and the elf scolds the boy, whose name is Tarek, and asks what he thinks about welcoming Rob by having a training session with him. Our hero gets a bit tense, asks if it's old-fashioned training, a fight, and says he has never gotten into a fight, but his friend says he fought hundreds of spiders, and the instructor says there was also the Forest Lord. Scared, a young elf asks if he defeated the Forest Lord. Rob wonders what they are talking about, realizing he can read Elvish, but still can't understand anything. He says they were right to run, that Tarek wouldn't have stood a chance. Exalted, the elf shouts to bring the human, and Rob realizes he doesn't need a translation for that one. He definitely wants to kill him. Riordan tells him to treat Rob with respect because everyone has something to teach, and they were his guards last night ensuring he could sleep. Rob is surprised by that information. Throwing his cloak on the ground, he says that Elf was one of the guards from last night, and Tarek replies, so what? Annoyed, Kira calls them idiots and says he almost. But our hero interrupts her and says he can handle this. Waiting with his sword in hand, he asks if they are going to train or not, and the elf calls him human. Rob says yes and asks what the rules are, if there's a bell to start or a countdown, but suddenly the elf is already charging. Sweeping Rob off his feet, he says there's no countdown. There never is a countdown. He tries to kick, but Rob dodges, while Tarek says, welcome to Ixagan, where some survive. And he adds that others don't, preparing to stab him with his sword. But in the next moment, his weapon breaks when it hits the ground. Rob rolled to the side and got back on his feet. The two guys stare at each other for a few seconds, until our hero says he won't fight him without a sword, and Tarek says he doesn't need to be looked down on, calling him human again. Then Rob says he'll make this a fair fight, which is more than he can say for the elf, and Tarek asks what the hell he's talking about. Defending himself from the elf's attacks, Rob says he's talking about last night and thinks that maybe he should have picked the pugilist class after all. With a quick movement, our hero counters right into the guy's stomach, but the elf throws himself forward, grabbing Rob and slamming him to the ground. Screaming, he says humans never fight fair, that all of them lie and hurt the people around him, and Rob realizes he has serious trust issues with humans. Our hero just keeps defending himself and says at least he's not the kind of person who tries to kill someone. Losing control, the elf screams and keeps hitting him, but Kira steps in and tells him to stop. Riordan shouts that that's enough. He approaches, asking what's going on there, and Rob stands up, saying that Kid tried to kill him last night. Rob points his finger, saying that someone wanted to take him out. The elf, already irritated, says that's typical human behavior, lying to come out on top in the situation, especially since he was about to win. Kira asks Tarek if that accusation has any truth, and the boy replies with another question. Is the human so weak that he needs to hide behind you? The training supervisor sighs at the situation unfolding like that. To him, this is exhausting and tiresome. Reardon asks the hero if he has any evidence of the accusations. Rob explains that he had an unwanted visitor last night who tried to destroy him, and that the elf, instead of protecting him, let the assassin in. Once again, the supervisor checks the truth of the information, and Tarek shows nervousness, unsure how to respond. In Elvish, Volto asks his friend to stop trying to defend himself because it's only making things worse, and that he himself is also guilty. Then this guy steps forward and explains that he is responsible for what happened. Reardon asks him to explain while Kira shoots him a death glare. Going back a bit in time, the young man says that Tarek woke him up while he was snoring. Feeling a bit lost from waking up slowly, the friend says it's morning and that the other slept through his shift. Finally, Volto asks how long he had been out, and the boy says he doesn't know since he just arrived. It seems the human wasn't protected for a good while because of this, and anyone could have come in and taken Rob out during the whole night. Slightly worried, Volto suggests they both check how the guest is doing. I'd rather not risk Reardon finding out about the epic failure to protect the guy, especially since he has a vacancy for a pet monster, says Tarek. The supervisor interrupts the story energetically, asking if they were joking with him, then calls them irresponsible. For a while, the man, who was very angry at that stupid attitude, gave the duo a proper scolding. However, the entire conversation was in Elvish, so Rob doesn't understand anything. In that case, Kira summarizes the story of the two boys, and he is impressed by this plot twist. The man apologizes for their behavior, but the hero says that since it wasn't on purpose, and as long as it won't happen again, he considers it water under the bridge. Reardon asks about water under which bridge since he didn't understand, and the boy explains that it's a common expression from where he comes from. Everything's fine, except for the part where you broke my nose, adds the young man facing the duo. Volto gives Tarek a little push to make him apologize, and the boy does so. Happier, Rob accepts the apology and asks if someone can get him some ice, and Kira says he just needs to use a healing spell, something the boy forgot was way simpler. Then the young man uses the Like Surge spell and starts looking at his own face. In the next moment, the hero is healed and good as new. Let's start again. I'm Rob, and now that I know none of you were involved in the mission to take me down, it's truly a pleasure to meet you, says the boy. However, the students, jaws dropped, are still trying to process the fact that the human has a regeneration skill. The level of his skill is 4, and they ask how much vitality he has, a common question. Alia explains that it must be the luxury of having fast learning. The hero asked about that, and Kira says it's in the nature of humans to gain levels and skills faster than others, meaning yet another reason for them to be hated. Rob can barely hold a sword without cutting himself as already level 11. Getting regeneration is also difficult, but the boy somehow skipped requirements and uses it with ease. Wondering whether everything he just heard was a compliment or not, he figures he should probably thank them. Ilya thinks our boy hasn't faced any real difficulty during his time in this world, but he lists his encounters. First, a wolf took his arm. Second, he fell off a cliff and had to pull strength from the depths of his being to hold on. Then on the third day, the Lord of the Forest smacked him so hard he hit his head on a tree, and Rob asks the elf if he really hasn't faced any hardship. The girl exclaims that she lost her entire family, intending to show that this, yes, was something truly bad. Casually, the human says that wasn't his fault since he didn't even dream of being here. In a fit of rage, she kicks the boy in the face, and the terminal shows that he took damage, but the hit was so strong that it didn't even need the terminal to confirm the injury. Reardon interrupts the commotion, saying that this isn't a place for fights but for training, and turning to the girl, asks if she understood. While watching the boy and Kira, who also got angry and almost drew her sword to react, Alia gives a little smirk and says she understood. The man 48 says that from this moment on, they will take a break from training to do some circuit work. As he turns his back to leave, he explains that if he has to come back because of another problem with that group, they will be responsible for sewer duty for a month. The warrior explains that the student can be hard to deal with sometimes and asks if the boy is okay, then says that while he's healing, she will show him the place. Now the two are watching a young elf practicing archery, and when Kira says who he is, Rob realizes the boy looks very familiar. The woman calls him over. Our hero notices that he saw him before in the forest when he was with another girl. The boy says he literally saw him for 2 seconds before they ran off. Orntol, slightly nervous, says that the berserker looks different without all that dirt on his face, and he agrees that looking like that must have made it hard to approach. Now Kira shows him another student, Zamira, a skilled swordswoman and the coolest of them all. And then she says that the boy has already met the 2 slackers who are working out in a corner. She also informs him that their names are Volto and Tarek, the one who broke his nose. They are tools, but they're good at what they do. Rob notices that one of the students has brown hair, and that seems unusual for elves, and Kira says it's better to keep that to themselves. The warrior explains that his grandfather was human, and the young man imagines that the summary of that elf's issues with him probably comes from his father, and that makes sense. Some of Tarek's relatives died in the cataclysm, so it's more than just issues with his father. Volto was his buddy, and they are best friends. Suddenly, what seemed to be a knife went flying, and it stuck into the wooden wall right next to the hero's head. Elia apologizes, saying her hand slipped by accident while the boy enters a slight panic. Kara explains that that girl is her least favorite person in the village. As she notices the boy starting to get uncomfortable, the woman urges him to let it go because the girl won't give any experience if he decides to fight. The elf asks if the boy is ready for more target practice, and Rob, completely ignoring the other's warning, replies that the girl is asking for a fight. But, against everything Elia expected, he raises his arms and gives up. The boy turns to the woman behind him and asks if she'd like to handle that situation. Extremely excited about the suggestion, Kara snaps her fingers and says, "It will be a pleasure." In the next moment, Kara delivers a strike and throws the girl to the ground. And again, the girl hits her back on the floor. The boy says he can't believe he just unleashed Kira like an attack dog, asking to be reminded never to awaken that side of her. Tense, Rob says, he says it seemed like a good idea at the time, but then the elf throws a huge punch right into the other girl's face, and Rob is a little impressed by the violence. He says he believes this isn't about him anymore, and the elf replies that no, those two don't need an excuse. Tarek asks if he intends to always hide behind his friends, and our hero says that if he's so eager, they can go again. But suddenly, a scream draws everyone's attention. With a trembling voice, Rob says maybe later, and Tarek, now scared, agrees and says fine. The beaten-up elf calls Kira a bloodthirsty beast and asks if this is just an excuse for her. Catching Kira off guard, she headbutts the girl and says it's no wonder Menta died. She says Kira was too consumed by bloodlust to support him, throwing the girl to the ground. But Kira, furious, tells her to shut up and punches her in the face. Once again, the elf is on top of the other girl, who says she says that Kira thinks they don't like her because she abandoned the ranger's call. But that's not it. It's because they all know she only cares about herself. Riordan grabs her arm and says it seems she doesn't remember what he said about attempted murder. Kara tries to justify herself, saying, but Elia. And the elf shouts that it doesn't matter how Elia wronged her. The truth that matters is that the village can afford damage caused by themselves. He explains that her actions could cost lives. He asks what would happen if the village were attacked and Elia were injured, and reminds them that they act as healers and rangers in a crisis. Riordan says she is suspended from training until further notice. He says she will be on patrol where senior rangers can keep an eye on her. She questions Rob, and the girl says he's the teacher's pet. Turning to Rob, Riordan says he clearly needs to learn how to defend himself and that he will undergo double training and extra time with Elder Duran. Riordan says he has spoiled them too much, and that if they don't improve, they can consider themselves dead out there. Then he orders everyone back to work. Kara says that if anyone hits him, just tell her, and she'll deal with them. She says she'll guard his door tonight, but Rob replies that he'll be fine, not to worry. And he thinks, or at least he hopes, as everyone watches him. Sometime later, they are all training archery, but it seems that our hero isn't doing very well with it. Suddenly, an arrow passes right by his ear, and Elia looks at him, poorly pretending, and says, oops. Sometime later, Rob excitedly asks if he will teach magic, but the elder says no, that he's actually there to ask some questions. Showing a board full of notes, he adds that it's about the land. If he believes he understands, then that will also be part of his punishment. On another day, our hero trains with Tarek and defends himself as best he can, when suddenly, his sword goes flying. The elf says that's it, that he should be happy they're not using real blades. And then he's back with the old man again, who says to be called as a hairdryer, and asks how on earth you cook with it. Days go by, and everyone is back to training. But Rob seems way too tired, when suddenly two elves circle all the way around him. And once again, his sword goes flying, but now he's facing another elf girl. Sometime later, he's thrown to the ground with a strike. The terminal congratulates the champion for achieving the title of running like an elven child, gaining +1 stamina, and he tells the terminal to screw off. It says he gained the skill fleet of foot, which improves his dexterity, and he replies that bribery won't work, that he's still trash. Back to the elder's questions, he asks if Rob understands the system of this mysterious magical talking box with buttons called a video game. Rob says yes. Duran asks if he considers their world to be a game, but our hero says no, that this world is real, strange, violent, but still real. He says he's blown too much to think it's anything else. Rob says it's not where he would have chosen to go if he had a choice. No way. But he's here now, and that matters too. The elf steps closer, offering a towel, and tells him to press it to his shoulders when he gets up. Rob, surprised, thanks him for that. He thinks that even though he isn't who he wants to be, the two prepare to fire their bows, and he thinks that maybe he can become someone he would like to meet. He receives the archery skill and starts celebrating because of it. Somewhat excited, the elder says it's beautiful and asks him to tell more about the theory of germs. Days go on, and our hero's there again, training hard. The girl watches him curiously. Turning away, she says it was a good match for him. He looks at his weapon, satisfied, while his body trembles. A little later, smiling, he blocks a blade coming toward him, and throws it back at Elia, who looks kind of stunned by that. Sometime later, Duran asks if there are tiny things living inside them. Rob says yes, they're germs that spread from one person to another without proper hygiene. The elder gets desperate and says if you'll excuse me, I think I'd like to take a bath, a vigorous one. On another day of training, our hero manages to disarm Tarek in a duel, then points his weapon at him and says, surrender. A little later, already alone, he trains with his sword. From afar, Riordan watches our hero working hard, then says there's something he's been wondering. He talks about Rob's sword, and Rob asks if he's referring to his third best friend. Then the elf asks if it's dwarven steel. Smiling, Rob asks if the elf thinks he should know what dwarven steel is. Riordan notices it's very well balanced. He explains that dwarven blades never rust or dull, that they They are as sharp as a hurricane or cutting winds. He says that, as he always says, don't get overconfident, keep it that way. A sword is only as good as the person who wields it. Rob wonders if that was the elf's weird way of saying good job. Kara asks if he's sure about this, and Riordan says all he needs is confirmation to show it to him. Then she says they should hurry. She's surprised and says the dungeon she found with Menta has gotten much bigger, and the mentor says they need to purge it before it starts spitting out monsters. Suddenly, a loud noise makes the elf say they're too late. A huge infected monster comes charging at them. It's a level 36 enraged minotaur. That massive creature runs after them while the duo tries to distance themselves. Riordan says they'll have to fight that thing alone. The girl asks if that's even possible, and he tells her to get ready. At that moment, the monster strikes, but the two manage to dodge the powerful attack. Both elves prepare for combat. Kara brandishes her sword, shouting at the creature to look at her, calling it a filthy beast, while activating her Circle of Death skill. She attacks the creature mercilessly, but the monster counterattacks with a powerful punch that hits the girl squarely. She falls to the ground, feeling the impact, while that massive creature charges toward her. When suddenly something powerful hits that monster from behind, sending it flying forward. Riordan is up in a tree with his bow, aiming at the creature. From up there, he prepares by grabbing another arrow from his quiver. Noticing his opponent, the minotaur charges in fury toward the elf. Jumping over it, Kara says that if its anatomy is like the others, and she pierces its leg with her sword. The monster roars in pain from the girl's attack. When the monster shifts its attention, the elf jumps down from the tree, attacking it. He lands on the creature just as Kara pulls out her sword and moves. That monster hits its knees on the ground, and the girl prepares to attack again. He jumps off that thing and shouts, "Kara now." The girl's sword reaches the monster's torso, and delivering a powerful strike right over the infection, the monster roars. The terminal shows they defeated the enemy. The instructor says it was great work, but asks if she could have made an even bigger mess. Kara apologizes if it's not elegant enough for him. Suddenly, a creature's scream grabs the elf's attention. Coming out of the dungeon is a level 50 griffin, a level 42 three-headed dog, and a level 53 basilisk. Hiding, the elf girl says there are too many of them, and Riordan explains that they must retreat to defend the village. Sometime later in the village, a guard rings the alarm bell. Everyone in the street starts running while our hero asks what's happening. Meanwhile, many are gathered around the crystal in the center of the village, and Rob approaches, asking what they are saying. Volto says he thinks the elders are powering the crystal shields, and he's never seen them do that before. Tarek says that probably means everyone is going to die. Kara approaches and says she knows there wasn't even time for a bath. Rob asks her to tell him the blood isn't hers, but she says they ran into a minotaur while on patrol. Riordan explains that the dungeon has become dangerous enough to manifest its monsters into the world, and now they need to act quickly. Everyone is waiting. And as he said, monsters of unimaginable power are approaching their village. He explains that these are minotaurs, griffins, and creatures they've only read about in fairy tales, and that it's their duty as rangers to drive them back, but they must cut these beasts at the root. That's why he's forming a special unit to put an end to this dungeon. Rob asks why he's looking over there, and Kira answers that it's because, but Rob interrupts and begs her not to say it's them, so the girl says she won't. Volto, excited, says that's what he's talking about and declares, "Ladies, gentlemen, and comrades, we're going monster hunting in the dungeon." As the shield forms around the village, Zamira says it's exciting and that she's really nervous, and Alia asks if that's true. Rob asks if he's the least excited one about going down there, and Kira says most of them don't really know the true dangers inside. Riordan says they'll be sent as support to 3 elite rangers. They must not stray from them and must do as they say. The monsters just want to kill them. Now it's party time. A terminal pops up saying the elf wants to invite him to a party. There it shows that Kira is level 28, Alia level 18, Volto, Zamira, and Tarek are level 16. Riordan is level 48, and Orntol is level 11. And our hero wonders if they'll make it. He realizes the risk level is high and thinks it's very tempting. But what is he trying to say? Then suddenly, the elf says it's time to go. Kara looks at her friend and says, "Let's go." Tense, our hero apologizes and says he'll have to leave early. Kara is shocked and says, "What? No, we need you down there." Blushing a little, she says that she needs him. Flustered, she says she means that he covered her back before in the same dungeon, so they need to do that again. One of the rangers says that it doesn't matter what she wants. He is something of great responsibility. Volto says that actually he's really strong. He saw him lifting weights. And Alia adds that he can handle himself in combat. But the older elf says that he's a human, and they can't take that kind of risk down there where they're going. Rob thanks everyone for the support, but says the man is right. He can't, and apologizes. That ranger says, "There you go," he said himself, and tells them to head into the dungeon because every second wasted brings the village closer to ruin. He approaches Kira to say something, and she tells him that they'll be fine, that he saw what she's capable of, and that he can see everyone since he's registered in the group. Looking down a bit upset, he says, "Right, the group terminal." She tells him to watch over Orntol while they're gone, and that they'll return faster than he thinks. Waving goodbye, he hopes she's right. Sometime later, several creatures surround the village. That powerful griffin charges against the city's shield, while the giant serpent watches the city walls and the elven guards stand ready. They fire at that huge creature, making arrows rain down on it. the serpent is struck by hundreds of arrows. Then it jumps from where it was. Riordan advances, saying they need to create an opening and that he should act when he sees a chance. The elf attacks that enormous creature. It feels the attack, while Kira says she knows the way, shouting for them to follow her. Running, she uses her fleet of foot skill to move faster. From inside, our hero watches the group moving away and realizes they managed to get through. Horntull says there's trouble in the east and that they're too spread out. That three-headed dog growls and charges toward the village. Heading toward the creature, our hero says he'll handle this. A true battle unfolds at the village entrance. The elves fight those powerful creatures while our hero descends from the wall. Down below, a giant three-headed dog tries to break through the shield. He thinks that he can't get too carried away, or he'll end up leveling up. He's just going to lead it to the cavalry. Then he runs past the monster, calling it like someone calls a little pet. He asks what it thinks about playing a round of tag, and that he'll be the bait. The monster chases after him while he tries to run and activates his fleet of foot ability. Meanwhile, nearby, Riordan continues his fierce battle against that enormous snake. At one point, he manages to defeat that massive animal, but it seems he notices something strange. Rob arrives, apologizing for crashing the party, but says they have another unwanted guest. Suddenly, he stops and shoots an arrow at the creature, but the arrow doesn't hit that huge creature. Our hero notices this and curses. At that moment, the elves charge at the creature. Rob thinks that if he fights back too hard, he might end up killing that thing, and so, while everyone is fighting and the monster bites a little elf that was jumping around, our hero thinks that he doesn't want levels. Suddenly, an arrow hits the monster square in the eye. Horntull shot it from atop the wall. The rangers seize the chance to attack the monster with everything they've got, and our hero joins the fun, thinking this could be the finishing blow. Throwing himself near the animal's mouth, he thinks he has to take the risk. With one movement, he ends up decapitating the creature. He falls to the ground with an impact, and the terminal shows that he defeated the three-headed dog while he thinks no. Riordan approaches, climbing onto the creature, and our hero feels grateful to the gods. A moment later, he asks for a little help to get out from under that huge thing. The elf, annoyed, asks what he was thinking. He didn't even draw his sword. Awkwardly, Rob says he's trying not to level up. Riordan tells him no, that in this situation he needs to do what must be done, that he shouldn't deny his nature, and that they've lost much without making unnecessary sacrifices. Rob is surprised by what he said. Then he opens the group screen on the terminal. There he sees that everyone who went into the dungeon is unconscious or seriously injured. Worried, he thinks they're all close to death. Rob tells Riordan that he thinks the group is in danger, and the elf tells him to grab Horntull and go, because, as he can see, he's still new to here. Rob and Horntull start running, and the instructor says that he already has experience with that dungeon, so he knows how dangerous it can be. He says he's not expecting a miracle, but that he saves as many as he can, and at that moment, they arrive at the dungeon entrance. Our hero asks if he's ready for this, and the boy replies asking if it's okay to say no. Rob says he feels the same, but they need to save their friends. Reaching the edge of the entrance, he thinks that he needs to take the risk for Kira. Horntull gets a burst of motivation and says, yes, for our friends. Smiling, our boy says, then I'll see you down there. And the two start descending using ropes. Horntull says he apologizes for his cowardly reaction earlier, that he was scared because of his sister Malika, who's all he has. It may not be too late though. Rob says he's not happy with how things went, but he can't blame him. Still, he wishes he had talked to him, and the boy says he feels embarrassed hearing him speak like that. And our hero tells him to consider this a fresh start. He thanks him for saving him from the three-headed dog while extending his hand to the boy. He smiles and accepts Rob's hand, while the terminal shows that the diplomacy skill leveled up to 3. Rob thinks, seriously, diplomacy isn't exactly useful in a dungeon. Our guy says that the entrance path to the dungeon is that way, and just to let him know, there might be spiders there, and he might scream. The elf says he was right after all, there are spiders. He comments that it seems like Kira and the group cleared that area without much trouble, and the elf asks what he thinks hurt them so badly and why they didn't leave it to the seniors. Rob says something else must have happened there, and Horntull shouts, there. He points to the end of a corridor where there's a red light. Our hero says he'll go ahead in case there's something evil and murderous over there, while the boy says he won't argue about that. He asks how everyone is doing, while Rob checks the terminal and says Zemira lost another 30 HP, and that some are unconscious, but they're still alive. He suggests they should move quickly, but in the next moment, a tentacle grabs his foot, pulling him hard down the stairs. Our hero tumbles and bounces all the way down. At the bottom, there's a kind of portal similar to the one that brought him there. Frightened, he says it's like last time, and immediately thinks about falling into the portal. Tense, he wonders if this could be his way home. But Horntull comes running after him, shouting, Rob, no. What about our friends? Snapping back, he thinks the boy is right. He needs to save his friends, he needs to save Kira. That thing full of teeth tries to pull them in, but he realizes it's not like last time. With a precise movement, he slices the tentacles. He keeps fighting the tentacles while thinking he didn't survive infinite wolves just to get eaten by a floating mouth hole. Horntull yells for him to hang on, and throws a projectile at the monster, causing a bluish explosion between the monster and our hero. The creature pulls its tentacles back. Then it starts backing away from the heroes. The monster retreats until it vanishes from sight. Horntull asks if he's okay. Rob says he doesn't know where he'd be without him, and the boy says it was a scary shadow, and that they were attacked so fast there was no chance to identify it. He thinks they aren't even that deep into the dungeon yet, and this already happened. Trembling, the boy asks how they're going to deal with this. that they're going to die. Our hero says that alone, yes, but that he was fast and knows things that he doesn't, so he's counting on the boy's experience. The boy says he'll try. Reaching an open area, Rob says, great. They're facing a huge labyrinth, and this is going to waste a lot of time that the others don't have. The terminal shows that he gained a passive leadership skill, and now he can better inspire people. The duo runs, fleeing from a clumsy level 18 Cyclops. Orenthal says to keep running, and Rob says now he knows how it felt when he was chasing him. Suddenly, the boy notices something and grabs our hero, and Rob asks if he didn't say not to slow down, but the elf tells him to look at his feet, and tells him to watch out for traps. Our hero looks back and sees the creature running after them. Orenthal jumps and spins through the traps, while Rob thinks that if only he had elven agility. But he figures the guy behind him is way worse and tells himself, focus, Rob, slow and steady. The monster comes running all clumsy behind them. Orenthal says they're almost there, while he jumps through the place saying, come on, these feet are gigantic. He runs with the monster right behind him. The elf says the Cyclops still isn't triggering the traps, and our hero comments that he's one lucky Cyclops. Suddenly, the creature catches up to him, and he says he's going to change that. Rob draws his weapon and strikes, but he aimed at the ground, hitting it with his weapon. Right at the moment when the Cyclops was reaching him, something happens on the ground. He activates the trap, which hits the monster right in the face, launching it to the ceiling. On the terminal, it shows that the enemy was defeated. The young man says he was clever, and Rob says they can use the labyrinth against them. Orenthal says it didn't give XP, and our hero thanks him. Rob says that maybe they'll be stuck there forever, but his companion says they won't, and asks him to come over there, saying he found something. He shows that their friends made marks so they could return easily, but our boy says it could also be a trap, but that they just have to accept this risk. The duo keeps moving forward through the labyrinth for a while. The boy says not to go that way because they activated a trap there, but there's no blood. He indicates that the group came back from there. The friends arrive at a corridor with blades on a pendulum. Pointing to a corner, he says he now believes they are on the right path. They run and dodge those traps. While jumping, Orenthal says he will help him, so our hero says he will wait right there. The boy tells him to go on his count, then starts counting 2, 1. Then he says 3, and the blade passes very close to him. Rob says the thing came close enough to trim his nose hairs. Horrified, the boy asks if he has nose hairs and says humans are weird. Excited, he shows an arrow on the wall and says they are back on track. Sometime later, the duo is running again, fleeing from 2 bizarre creatures. They push a door hard while a bunch of monsters push back trying to get in. Orenthal says there are no marks there and asks which way he would go, and our hero asks if it's left, saying he can't be wrong twice, right? A while later, once again, they are running like crazy from some more bizarre creatures. Deciding to face them, our hero unleashes a series of attacks, slicing those tentacles into many pieces. Meanwhile, the elf is shooting arrows at another bizarre creature full of tentacles when suddenly Rob calls out to Orenthal. He is next to the monster all beaten up and asks him to deliver the final blow. His elf friend asks if he's sure, but our hero insists, saying he should take all the XP. The boy delivers the final blow, and on the terminal, it shows he reached level 12. He thanks his friend, saying not many people offer the final blow, and Rob says he should be only one leveling up, while the boy tells him to put it into perception. Another creature advances to attack them, and Rob strikes it with his enormous sword. Excited, he realizes he can at least level up his class, gaining brawling level 2, although not as quickly. Sheathing his weapon, he says they should keep moving forward. He notices a trap, and because of that, gains 1 perception point. With a poisonous trap, he also manages to raise his poison resistance level to 5. Already in a safe place, he starts using his healing ability. Orenthal says he keeps getting hurt, but Rob explains that he's the tank and the elf is the guide, explaining that on Earth, the tank is the guide who stands in front to take damage for his friends. Happy with the information, the elf asks if they are friends, and hugging him, our hero says that anyone who saved his life so many times qualifies for that. Suddenly, the boy notices something strange and comments that he believes they are not alone. The guy says it's a black slime and that this is definitely about assassinating him. Out of nowhere, in front of them appears a grotesque creature, and the terminal shows all the data confused with a combination of strange letters when Rob tries to identify it. The friends are in shock and scared while he asks if these are. Orenthal asks if it's real while our hero dashes toward him, pulling him just in time to not be hit by an arrow. Rob commands them to run toward the door. Those monsters keep crawling behind them, shooting lots of arrows. Reaching the door, the boy crosses it going down the stairs while our hero is thrown down the stairs. He falls on top of the elf, and the two keep rolling down the stairs. At the bottom, they hit their heads against each other. Lying there on the floor, they start to recover. Our hero says he can't believe he followed them and believes he now knows what happened to the senior rangers. But trembling, Orenthal calls out to Rob. They are in a huge hall where a beastly chimera is trying to reach something there. In shock, he says it's the scariest thing he has ever seen, and our hero says no, this is. They can see that there is a tower in the middle, and hundreds of spiders are descending to a place. Orenthal asks him to wait because he is hearing something. Someone complains about why there are so many, and the young man realizes it's Alia, while Rob asks where she is, where all of them are. Shouting excitedly, the boy says they found them. By Lothran, they found them. But this is not very good news for our hero, who is unhappy about having to face these creatures among so many others. We can see the gigantic number of arachnids heading toward the two, while he asks for an incendiary bomb. The elf even says the bomb won't do anything against the spiders, but our hero tells him to trust. Soon, the two grab the little explosive balls and start attacking the spiders there. When the protagonist throws it, activating his arachnophobia skill, It causes a huge explosion, destroying and eliminating several spiders. Lots of spider parts go flying and fall on top of the two. The elf wonders how he did that, but I think the two don't have time for explanations right now, because there's a giant spider with the protagonist locked in its eyes, and his eyes are also locked on the giant spider, but purely out of fear. It's at this moment that the beast breaks out of its captivity and starts chasing the two. They quickly run while the elf keeps handing grenades to our MC. He keeps throwing and eliminating the smaller spiders, gaining lots of XP for it, even managing to level up his berserker skill. As he glows more and more ammo, he's happy that now they have hope. Our hero simply stops and turns toward the giant spider, telling it to prepare for this, because he throws several explosive balls at once, hitting both the hatchlings and the big one. The explosion is so strong that it ends up injuring him a little, causing some burns, but he has the recovery skill, which quickly makes his wounds heal. Like a maniac, he says that it scared him at first, but now he has become the spider's worst nightmare, asking if it expected some kind of fair fight. For this scoundrel, there's no such thing as fairness. The deal is bombs on them and insect extermination. After throwing a dozen explosive balls, the giant one finally falls, giving him a lot of XP and leveling him up. But it's at this moment that the elf feels an intimidating aura coming from the protagonist, and when he looks back with both eyes showing no feeling at all, it makes the little guy practically soil himself seeing that bizarre human. He even thinks he should have come wearing brown pants because now he's all messed up. But our proto just apologizes and says that he really is very afraid of spiders. Even though they eliminated the big one, the little elf warns that there are still many more, and when the two look back, they see that an entire swarm now has blood in their eyes because he killed the queen. The MC tells the elf to give potions to the wounded since he will distract all the insects. And even with the little one warning that he's going to die, the proto just gives a confident smile and says he's getting out of here alive today. Actually, it makes sense for him to be confident since his HP is full and he has poison resistance and fury ready in his back pocket. So with just one sword strike, he's already able to eliminate several spiders at once. Meanwhile, the elf from a distance just thinks this human is completely insane. But his mission is another, and he has to focus on the big chimera over there. The lion with a snake tail is clearly digging its claws, trying to climb up and reach the elves. And the little elf from a distance is just praying that his stealth is high enough. But for him to get closer, he first needs to distract the creature for a moment. So he picks up a stone and throws it far away, making one of the snake tails get distracted. Soon he manages to get close and reach the door without being noticed. He starts trying to do a lockpick there to unlock the door, while we see our proto making a barbecue out of insects. The guy is like a maniac, destroying every spider he sees in front of him. He even tries to apologize to see if it helps, because just because he killed everyone's mother, that doesn't mean they need to be so upset about it. But it's not really working, and the little spiders are coming at him and using their venom. Is he going to turn into Spider-Man now? We don't know. His situation is definitely desperate since no matter how fast he runs, there are spiders everywhere. On the ceiling, on the floor, on the walls, on the doors. And finding himself in this very cornered situation, he thinks he has to do something crazy to survive. That's why he simply jumps down the stairs, making a big superhero leap. Besides the jump, he also does the classic superhero landing with one knee on the ground and the other hand balancing. But, as everyone already knows, Deadpool proved to us that this landing isn't very good and that it really hurts your knees. The poor guy can barely get up, even using his sword for support. But when the spiders are coming toward him, he says that he's not the one locked in with them. They are the ones locked in with him. Back to the group that's trapped, they are a bit confused, wondering where the spiders that were there just now went. But at that moment, they start hearing a noise at the door, immediately getting anxious thinking it's more of them. But before the two elves jump into action, they hear Endol's voice, getting confused about how this kid is still alive. They open the door and immediately ask what he's doing there, getting the response that he's there to save everyone, leaving the older elves confused about how he managed to get past the Spider Queen, to which he replies that Rob killed her, leaving the two impressed that a human did that. Of course, it wasn't the traditional way since he just burned everyone to ashes, but still he won. The older one says they're lucky they don't have two beastly chimeras, making the small one wonder what happened to the other one. But his companion doesn't answer and is just happy that his friend now has backup. The long-haired one arrives asking where the human is now. However, the small one just looks with a firm and confident gaze, already knowing that he's probably out there wiping out insects. They realize that the chimera is slowly approaching, so they can't stay there anymore. Then the elf asks how the wounded are doing, finding out that since everyone took a potion, they're no longer in danger. However, there's still no confirmation of when they'll be able to stand, so they can't be taken into battle. The situation seems very complicated since the lion is getting quite close and shaking the entire tower, making everyone think the tower will collapse before they're ready to fight. The situation is really bad because as much as they need to move and get out of there quickly, it's impossible to defeat that thing with everyone injured. But at that moment, our little elf says he's small enough to get through the window, so he'll distract it while everyone recovers. Obviously, the two there get angry, saying he'll die if he does that, but the young one just says they're forgetting a very important member of the group. And we clearly know who that is, the greatest insect exterminator in manhwa history. The guy is still wiping out the remaining spiders. He's so sinister, with such a terrifying look, even the remaining spiders can't look at him for too long. And they soon start running away while he taunts them to really leave if they're scared. But while they're climbing the stairs, he ends up feeling an intimidating presence up there, wondering what kind of abomination is up there. But since he's not stupid or anything like that, he simply closes the door and says that whatever is up there will stay stay up there. He then goes to check his status, the basics, noticing that besides gaining a lot of XP from all that, he also managed to level up some skills. But when he returns to the starting point and finds the chimera getting hit by several arrows, the beast actually gets scared, because the gigantic lion simply bites the arrows like it's putting skewers in its mouth. And it starts putting a lot more strength into climbing now, gripping firmly to the wall as it almost reaches the elves up there. At that moment, the little one jumps while dodging an attack, falling hard on the ground and even hitting his head on a rock. The MC approaches asking if he's okay, since that was a pretty bad fall. But the two don't have much time to worry about each other since the beast is approaching. Unfortunately, the elf ended up twisting his ankle while throwing himself to the ground, making Rob pissed since he imagined the elves should be like cats, but the elf doesn't know what a cat is. While the chimera chases the two, it ends up taking some arrows in the back and soon turns toward the elves who are still up there. But the arrows are really just for distraction since they don't have much effect on the beast. The elf even asks to be left behind, but the protagonist is determined and is going to put some points into endurance, suddenly stopping while the beast charges toward the two. But what it hits is only the empty ground since the kid activated the dash skill and starts running with the elf on his back. The little one asks if there's a plan, which I think should be his job since he jumped down recklessly, but the protagonist's plan is simply to run until someone comes to help. And if help doesn't exist, then they're screwed. Yeah, my friends, their situation is not looking good since the beast is roaring loud enough to shake the place, and the spikes stuck in the ceiling start slowly swinging, falling on top of the protagonist and the elf. But since he's pretty fast and agile, he manages to dodge some, but he won't be able to keep doing that for long. At that moment, he's almost hit by one of the rocks, but ends up putting some points into perception to at least not turn into a pancake. And he quickly asks the little one what the situation is back there while being told that the chimera is running really fast. However, he gets ready to shoot some arrows at it, reminding me a lot of that GTA mission where we're on the back of the bike trying to stop enemies coming after us. The little elf fires a very accurate arrow that hits the chimera's shoulder, making it roar from what I think is pain. But I don't know if it's pain or just pure rage, and all our protagonist and elf need right now is a distraction. They're even doing coordinated attacks, where the elf shoots and the swordsman slashes. But that beast has its resistance at max and doesn't feel a thing. Besides that, our MC, who had already fought hundreds of thousands of spiders, is already at his limit. And soon the message that he received damage appears, even before he feels the creature's strike, being thrown against a pillar with a lot of force and falling to the ground like a limp wooden doll. He tries to get up, but the damage was really high this time. So high that even his brain was affected, so he can't focus properly. The beast keeps approaching, jumping on him to finish him off, while the little elf with a bad ankle can't do anything to help our MC. And it's at this moment, when things seem lost and the protagonist is staring death in the face, that something very strange happens. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.